Okay to go. Well, welcome everybody to the Environment Services Committee on Wednesday the 6th of October in the Town Hall in Enniskillen. And just like before we commence the meeting, I'd like to make a special welcome to John here tonight. John Hughes, the new Director of Environment and Place. And look forward to working with you, John. And I know all the other councillors will as well. We wish you the best in your new role. And just like to concur with the comments that Alison had made in an email there through the week. Like to thank all the staff and the senior management team who have just been fulfilling that role in the absence of a director, and your work has been much appreciated. So you all know who you are. Thank you very much for that. So we'll just get on now with the agenda. Item 1 is apologies. So I'm joined by 3 councillors here tonight in the chamber members, and the rest are joined in by WebEx. So apologies first of all from Sinn Féin, please. Just going to go here.
Good morning, Carly. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly and Councillor Podrigan Kelly. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have no indication from members that they won't be attending, so there'll be no apologies from our group.
Thank you. Have we Councillor Garrity with us for the SDLP?
Yes, you do, Chair. Good evening, Mark. Apologies, Councillor John Call. He has a NILGA event and he may try to hop on, but at the minute he's at that. So no other apologies from the rest of the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And Councillor Robinson, Paul?
No apologies, Chair. Councillor Erskine, joining.
Thank you. And is there any other apologies? Okay, members, don't see no indications. We'll move on. To sign, item number 2 is to sign minutes and confidential minutes of previous meeting held on the 8th of September 2021, and that has been done. Item number 3 is declarations of interest. Have we any? See no indications. Declarations. Okay. Item number 4 is matters arising through the minutes of the 8th of September for matters arising. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. 4. Page 5. Page 6. Councillor Correct.
Carly, it's just actually relating to page 2. Sorry, it's just that I noted an item of correspondence in other correspondence, and I think it's relating to this item. I note I think it just came in today, maybe, correspondence. Our question was just around announcements that were made in Britain around shortages in chemical supplies there as a result of what I think it's Brexit, but I believe the Minister here, and I've just had the chance to have a quick skim at it, the Minister here is saying that we don't have those same shortages, so just welcome that response there.
That's great, thank you. Okay, I think we're on page 6, members. Page 6, matters arising. Page 7.
Chair, yes, thank you. Just going back, Chair, apologies, going back to also to page 2 in relation to the correspondence from the utility regulator. You'll note in 4.1 of the pack where there is a response from the utility regulator in relation to the role of the regulator in light of the recent price increases, and to seek clarification why the increase of 35% in cost by Firmus Energy was agreed or proposed, and the utility regulator has responded to both of those issues in the correspondence.
Thank you, John, for that. Councillor Corrie.
Margaret Carley, thanks, Chair. I could propose to note the correspondence, Chair, but just on this issue, and just thinking about energy supply in general, and I know that the Department for Economy has been or recently consulted on the energy supply or the future energy supply. But just taking on board and comments that have been made too in the chamber and issues that we've raised ourselves around the current gas pipeline that's been laid at the minute in our district, and then coupled with the increase in prices, and that's obviously some people have in the last year changed to gas. We recently met with the housing executive and they spoke to us about how they would be preferring now their tenants to go to gas, because they were speaking about how that was better economically for people, and you would really question that, but I know we could raise that with the housing executive in an upcoming meeting with them. But just thinking about in terms of future energy supply here, and we do have a situation where we're having gas, like a new network being laid, and it's really at the end of its life, you would have to say. I mean, and we have taken decisions as a council around fossil fuel divestment, around moving away from fossil fuels, and we have our own net zero targets to meet, not just as a council body, but ambition for the district as well. So I think there's a bit of work for us to do there, a bit of thinking for us to do, but I just wonder if a first step and a proposal I would make would be to invite maybe the Department for Economy as the relevant department in to speak to us about what their vision is, what their plans are. And I'm thinking about this particularly in terms of our district being a rural area. Maybe this is something that could feed back to the Rural Affairs Subcommittee as well, because I think we will have a very different, it'll look different here than it will in our cities. So just propose that the relevant departments, and I believe it is the Department for Economy, if they could come and meet with us and talk to us about plans and opportunities for the likes of community heating schemes, what their involvement would be, who would be involved in that. We need to understand this just for providing that for the people of our district. Cormagat, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Celine, do you want?
Chair, if I may just make comment, the Department for the Economy sector are the responsible government department, and they have been in the process of developing an energy strategy. I was declare an interest of sorts in that I was invited to represent local government in some of the working groups that were there to inform the papers and the information and the data gathering for that strategy. But it was issued for consultation earlier this year. The strategy is not finalised, but certainly we have, and we did have an event last December where we looked at strategy and looked at energy generally, and we had invited some of the department officials to speak at that. So I think we could do a follow-up on that as well. But just to confirm that we do have a voice of sorts there, and have been highlighting the rural issues, and particularly the other aspect of it is the high dependency on oil central heating as well, which is very much in all of our rural housing and would be very difficult to move away from in any sort of immediate, but obviously as part of the challenge around climate change and addressing the environmental issues.
Thank you, Celine. You want a very quick, just please.
Cormagat, just a very quick follow-up. No, thanks for that, Celine. I know there has been a lot of work ongoing, but just in terms of how do we have a part to play? I don't know, and I'm sure others have these questions. You know, when you're talking about community energy schemes, are there opportunities, are there ways that we don't necessarily have to do it, but maybe it might be such making maybe community buildings or bases that we have in areas available to be the place where something could be based. I'm not sure, Chair, what the answer is, but I think we just do need to look at this more. But I do appreciate, I know Celine and officers have been doing a lot of work on it, but it's just for us to get a better understanding.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maguire's next there. Or sorry, Councillor McAleer, sorry, my mistake. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say if you had access to
I'd
see
read
the
it wrong
hands that
there.
are raised online.
Read it wrong.
I had raised my hand as well to speak on, well, two issues on page 2 as well. The first being the issue at Ravensbury, and I mentioned to the directors earlier today about another issue or subsequent issue in relation to bin collection. I've been advised that that's something that's ongoing and being looked into, so hopefully we can see progress on that. But in relation to the matter raised about the utility regulator, I suppose the letter we get back here paints a picture of a helpless regulator standing by whilst gas prices are shooting up out of control, and indeed that this is likely to continue into the winter months. And I suppose with the cut to the £20 uplift in terms of universal credit, and with the Tory implementation of the 1.25 national insurance tax, this is something that's going to hit everybody, but it's going to hit vulnerable families worse than anyone else. Now, rather apologetically, the regulator explains away the price increase, largely repeating the words of the gas companies, stating that the gas prices just this week were trading at 213 pence a therm, which is almost 5 times the level it was back in March 2021, and that the cost of wholesale gas has risen over 230% over the past 7 months, and indeed continues to rise further as we head into the winter. I think what the out of control gas prices highlights is the urgent need, even at this late stage, to examine the questionable strategic policy of gas to the west and whether it needs to be totally reconsidered by the department, as Councillor Curry rightly points out, Department for Economy, and changed in the light of these and other developments, not least of all the climate crisis that again the council recognises we're in, supposedly Stormont recognises we're in, and a plan for the ending of burning of fossil fuels. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked at off the back of this, Chair. I'd also propose that we do, it's mentioned in the letter, that we do convene a meeting with the utility regulator as a council body, and we look into convening something like that, because it's hard to sort of clarify what regulation the utility regulator can actually provide. He seems to be really at the mercy of the gas companies, providing they're not turning too much of a profit. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I was just going to come in on this later issue, although I have also raised the issue of the connection at Ravensbury, the collection of bins at Ravensbury. The issue really around the surge in prices, spot prices of gas have increased 3 times what they were at the beginning of the year. This is a fact obviously confirmed in this letter from the regulator. And I believe, if I got it right on the radio as I was listening coming home, they actually increased a further 40% today before falling down after Putin's intervention to guarantee that connection to the Nord Stream 2 will actually provide gas to Europe from Russia. And obviously there are a lot of concerns around that, effectively signaling a domination of Central Europe, Europe's energy system by the Russians. So it's interesting to see the global tensions around this issue. The gas infrastructure is, I think, chronically outdated. It has been known. It's natural gas is 1,000 times more forcing for climate change than carbon dioxide. And fugitive emissions from this industry are perhaps the main driver at the moment of the surge in temperatures globally. So why Stormont saw fit, and all the Stormont executive basically paid £250 million in grant aid to a company to connect people to gas, only for the gas to surge to 3 times the cost. It's really difficult to understand. And let us just put that into context. The cost of that grant alone would have covered the cost of making up the £20 universal credit top up 2.5 times over. So it just shows you how much money has gone into this. Firmus, and this is the point really at the end of the letter, the utility regulator claims that, you know, the companies have to be able to make their fair profit, and they are financeable, and to be able to carry out their activities. Of course, what's not stated there is that these companies are profit-making enterprises. Firmus, which its parent company, had profits surge £12 million. I think it's 60% in 2019, and they were estimating that was on the basis of an extra 7,000 connections. They were estimating that they would have 100,000 connections by the end of 2022. There's a hell of a lot of money in this industry, and unfortunately, there's no answers in terms of defending the people from Stormont. We need to see the end of private suppliers and private enterprise in this. Energy must be returned to the public control and democratic control, so that citizens are protected, and that you know, we also need to see investment in renewables as a mechanism to leverage ourselves from fossil fuels. But again, nothing in the direction of that. No public investment, a large-scale public investment in renewables capacity in Northern Ireland either from Stormont. So it's all very disappointing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, just in light of the contribution that these price increases contribute to poverty in that sense, I would propose that at a near future, possibly November, meeting of the R&C Committee, Regeneration and Community, that we do a recap on the poverty conference, which we held as a council and was presided over at the time by Siobhan and Anne-Marie in their respective roles. So, and again, Councillor McAleer has made some reference to an accumulation of things, you know, a perfect storm, which is contributing to and adding to people's poverty. You know, the universal credit uplift removal, rise in fuel and energy costs, as we're talking about now, food costs, end of furlough, national insurance increase or tax. And so within community planning, I would be aware that there are action leads, and one of them would be on the combat poverty strategy. So if at all possible, I would like this to be pulled together in the form of a recap or an update or a report on our council's role in helping to combat poverty locally. And I would like to think that that might happen as soon as the R&C meeting in November. Thank you, Chair. I'm making that proposal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McElduff. Just lastly on this is Councillor Green, please.
Yeah, could I second that proposal from Councillor McElduff? Just following on from what Councillor Curry was saying, I remember, must be 7-8 years ago, we had somebody in the old Fermanagh Council, I think. There was a lot of wind turbines being applied for through planning, but there was no opportunity for them to be connected to the grid. The infrastructure was that bad, and I remember the ones that was in produced a map of the infrastructure that was actually able to take power in and distribute it on across the north, and basically Fermanagh may as well not have been there. There was no infrastructure whatsoever, and they showed us, I think it was maybe a 10-year plan, if my memory serves me right, of what they were going to do. And again, any improvements that was being made included Fermanagh. So I would suggest that if the Rural Affairs Subcommittee is having this has been passed on to them, that we relook at that whole infrastructure, because if we're talking and we're actually going to be consistent on renewable energy, as things progress, I would foresee possibly that solar energy, as the solar panels get better and better and able to absorb energy, that they possibly will be the more sustainable solution than wind. And a lot of farmers would absolutely buy into that if the infrastructure was to actually be able to supply the electricity grid. Because with solar panels, I'm not talking about tens of acres of them, but so many of them here or there across the landscape. They actually farm animals and all can still graze and use the fields around them. So I would like to see that somebody in that's able to give us an update on how the electricity grid has been updated, and if it has been updated, and if Fermanagh was included at all. Because if there was 250 million spent on bringing gas to the west, imagine what that would have done to the electricity infrastructure.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Green. We'll just tidy up some of these proposals we had, members. Could I have a seconder to note the item 4.3 of correspondence that was proposed by Councillor Curry?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Dehan. Thank you. Councillor Dehan there is happy enough. And then we had a proposal from Councillor McElduff, which was seconded by Councillor Green, that there's a report on the poverty. And John's happy enough that comes, all been well, to the November meeting. And we had another proposal then from Councillor McAleer, which was to convene a meeting with the utility regulator. Could I have a seconder for that?
Second that, yeah.
Councillor Blake had his hand up there. Is all members happy with them proposals so far?
Yeah, Councillor Curry made a proposal too, I think.
Yes. Councillor Maguire is just...
Mark, thank you. Mark, yeah, just as Councillor Green has indicated, I believe that Councillor Curry made a proposal that has yet to be seconded, so if I could formally second that, Margaret.
Thank you. That's great. Yes, Councillor Curry made a proposal about inviting the department, the relevant departments, and then Councillor Green had added onto that as well. Is that maybe for the Rural Affairs Subcommittee? Is that aimed towards, or just clarify that maybe, please?
Chair, wherever suitable, but maybe it might be appropriate to report back to the Rural Affairs Subcommittee, maybe. I'm not sure, but just with the rural nature of it, perhaps.
Yes, thank you. Celine, are you happy enough with that proposal? And all agreed, members? Thank you. We were on page. John, John, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I'm sorry to bring you back to page 3 also, but there is correspondence there in relation to the Swadlin Bar River from the Office of Public Works, where we had asked them a number of queries with regard to the work that they would be responsible for. You will see from the correspondence there that they feel that the channel more than likely remains with the riparian landowner. They have asked for further information in order to confirm that, which will provide.
Okay.
So it's just to note the correspondence.
Thank you, John, and we will have that information provided at requested. Okay. Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just on this issue, because I know I was also contacted as part of this, and as the councillor made the proposal, there are a number of outstanding issues, and I may not have made clear at the time, but this resulted from a site meeting which I had with DFI Rivers on this particular issue, which is severe erosion on the riverbanks beside the Swadlin Bar River, or sometimes as it's also called, the Claddagh River. There appears to be a huge problem in around the the partition and between Fermanagh and Cavan, as the river goes by different names at certain junctures. When it's in the north, it seemingly goes by Swadlin Bar River, and then closer to Swadlin Bar, it goes by the Claddagh River. I know the Office of Public Works had suggested that one of the tributaries may be known as the Rag River, but what's really happened here is that we had DFI Rivers Agency out on a site visit, and we were informed that this river was not designated and that there seemingly is no public responsibility for the river. Now, I have consulted with the landowner who's currently checking with his solicitors as to the boundaries of where the site of the closest property to the river lies with. But the issue really is that the Gladys Swadlin Bar River is already a designated special area of conservation. It's been at least since 2008, and that's because of the various life in the river and because of the fauna and other growth and life that's around the river. But yet, when it comes to severe erosion, which has worsened in the last number of months, which is now encroaching on someone's private property, and also at a bridge juncture between the village of Swadlin Bar and on the Gortore Road towards Cannolly, it is causing huge problems. And I think the Office of Public Works, I'm glad that they have responded, but there were a number of outstanding responses as well. We were expecting to hear back from the Department of Infrastructure. Of course, the original designation was given under DERA, and then the responsibility for rivers changed from agriculture and environment to infrastructure, which we need to hear back from the Department of Infrastructure. The original request that I made in the proposal was that the DFI would adopt responsibility for this river because it is causing huge erosion. It was a former checkpoint between the Cavan Fermanagh border, and you can see the concrete bollards that were put there during that time to protect from erosion, and they've all now been washed out. And as I say, the erosion has gotten much worse. So basically, I'd be just proposing again that we write to the Department of Infrastructure, to the Minister Nicola Mallon, to offer some resolution to this issue, because I don't think the responsibility should fall on the private landowners. And as I say, at the moment, it's not clear whether or not the boundary actually goes straight to the riverbank itself. That riverbank is, as I say, it's a dynamic land boundary. It's changing all the time because of this erosion. So it does need to be dealt with. So look, flag for me and Shane, I'll leave it there, but just to propose that we write back to the Minister and to try and gain some resolution for this.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you happy just to note that correspondence as well that we have received?
Yes, I'll note the correspondence, and I will get back with Councillor with
the proposal there then to write. That's okay. Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second Chris's proposal and second the noting of the correspondence.
Thank you, Feely, that's great. Okay, are we all agreed with writing to the Department for Infrastructure members? We're still on matters arising then. That's that item of correspondence dealt with. Matters arising on page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 5, Chief Executive Directorate Reports. 5.1 is to consider draft consultation response to Shaping Future Support, the Health and Disability Green paper, which is paper A. We'll just bring in Margaret at this point, please. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this paper really is, as is stated, to request approval of the draft response to the consultation on the Shaping Future Support, Health and Disability Green paper, and also to provide support for the response from Northern Ireland Housing Executive. The consultation closes on the 11th of October, which is the reason why we're bringing it to this committee rather than the normal route via PNR. Department for Work and Pensions consulting on a number of aspects of support for disabled people and people with health conditions, which include access and use of benefits and services, employment support, improvements to assessments and decision making, changes to future assessments, and the structure of the main benefits claimed. The draft response is set out as Appendix 1, and it follows the template response format. So some questions are targeted individuals and are not covered in this response, and that then affects the numbering. But the numbering effect on the questions reflects the ordering in the actual template. The remaining answers are based on council views as expressed in response to previous related consultations. And we've also spoken to a number of stakeholders, including independent advice services, organisations that offer employment support to people with disabilities, and also members of the Council's access and inclusion groups. I suppose in summary, the response suggests that the assessment system must be fundamentally reformed and co-produced with organisations that represent people with disabilities, as well as those with evidence of the system, like applicants, their families, support workers and advisory organisations, in order to achieve true change. The response from Northern Ireland Housing Executive doesn't fit neatly into the response template, but we would recommend that we give it as supporting evidence from a community planning partner, that we give support to the document. Whilst it is a Department for Work and Pensions green paper, since the social security system here operates in a similar way to that in England, Scotland and Wales, DFC, the Department for Communities, is keen to seek the views of individuals and organisations here in relation to the questions posed within the green paper, in order to ensure that the views of local stakeholders are considered by Department of Work and Pensions, and also to inform any future change. So a copy will also go to Department for Work and Pensions once agreed. So it's recommended that the Council approves the draft response to the consultation on the Shaping Future Support, Health and Disability Green Paper, and supports the response from Northern Ireland Housing Executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Now, members, we have seen the response and the recommendations, and I would encourage you to keep your comments brief. We do have a few consultation responses before us this evening, and we would like to get through the business. So we'll bring in the first speaker as Councillor McAleer. Councillor McAleer. Seem to be having Councillor McAleer. We'll just go to Councillor Warrington as next on the list there.
Thank you, Chair, and certainly I welcome this. It's very, I read the report, and certainly there's a lot of in Appendix 2. I've read it, and there's a lot of stuff in it. Yes, there's a lot of points in there that we can certainly contribute to. Things like, and I know certainly I sit on the LEP, and one of our big things at the moment is actually housing, and obviously housing. Social housing and housing that's fit for people with disabilities. So there's a lot of good points in there, and I think it's something we could talk about all day and go through it. We obviously are not going to do that tonight, but certainly I would propose the recommendations from from the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington, for that. Councillor McAleer, did you get the connection with us? Councillor Coffey is next there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say, Councillor McAleer's having problems with his Wi-Fi at the moment. I think he's trying to get back on. Anyway, I think it's a very thorough response. It is highly concerning, frankly, what's before us, and I think we do strike generally the right message. I think we could. Potentially, I think the message should be slightly more strengthened, that we need to basically reject the proposals. I've three little issues there. I think we need to just, if we could include them, I'd like to propose we did. The first is around, there's a reference to co-production. And while I recognise it is vital that representatives of those who receive benefits and who work with the benefits sector and so on, I would like to see an inclusion of those who actually deliver the benefits, the workers who actually deliver the benefits, because they should be involved in the co-production. Many workers delivering benefits are actually themselves dependent on benefits, and there's a lot of, I think, that should be exposed and highlighted, and I think that their involvement would be useful. The second aspect would be, I think there are references throughout, I think 6 or 7 references to capita. And obviously, I think we need to state categorically that these assessments should not be outsourced to the likes of Capita, that they should be brought back in-house, and that I think there's a point made on page 21 about people with certain conditions having access to people, to assess them with the relevant experience qualifications. And I think that that goes right across the board. These services should be brought back in-house, and relevant qualified individuals to do the assessments, not a private company like Capita. So I think that should be included. And the third point really is on page 8 of the response, where we reference the need for disability awareness courses for employers. I think all employers are well aware at this stage of their responsibilities under the Disability Discrimination Act and the like. And I think what we need to see is much stronger than simply giving employers courses. We need to see enforcement. We need to see fines. We need to see the defence of defended workers, workers with disabilities who are suffering, disadvantage, exploitation, and improper treatment by their employer. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Josephine Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank Margaret for her report. I think it's very, very comprehensive, and I think it reflects a lot of the debate that we as a council have had over the years regarding the benefit system, welfare reform, and in particular the shortcomings of the PIP assessments. And I think Margaret has captured that debate very, very well. And I want to thank her and her team for that excellent work. I suppose one of the areas that I feel probably needs to be strengthened is, addressing the support that is required by people who have disability, which is not immediately obvious to people. And I'm thinking of people who have severe and enduring mental health difficulties, and people who have conditions like autistic spectrum disorder and adult ADHD. And often these people, their disabilities are not obviously apparent, and unless assessors have particular training in and knowledge in how these conditions affect people's functionality, then it's definitely very, very difficult for them to assess their needs. Secondly, I want to concur with Margaret in that the application process for benefits is far, far too long and complicated. And even for people who are very au fait with these assessments, it takes them all their time to get all the information correct, and also to return forms in a timely manner, and so on. So I think that really needs to be simplified. Also, people who are seeking suitable employment, the hoops that they have to go through to demonstrate that they are actively looking for work, I think that's far too stringent. And I think that overall a much more sympathetic and supportive process needs to be implemented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Siobhan Curry.
For Margaret Carley. Yeah, I want to thank Margaret and her team. This is a really great response, and a lot of work has clearly gone into it, and thank everybody who's been involved actually in forming the response as well. I think it's 33 pages there, so it's a light bit of work. Just a couple of points, and I'm not going to go through everything. I think, like I said, it's really good. I like the points around pointing out around the Irish Sign Language as well, because a lot of people, of course, using that. And there's a light point there. I feel like it's a bit of a light touch on around NI Direct not having all the information that people require around this, and then they make the call, who are the advertised body to go to, and anybody who's had any experience of that knows very well that they are more inclined to be looking at how they can take money away from people rather than finding them the support actually that they're entitled to. Certainly, that's my experience of them. So I think, and it is mentioned there, I just would like to see it maybe just the language a little bit stronger around the independent advice agencies and the likes of Welfare NI, that they, like I say, it is mentioned there, but I just think it just needs to be clearer that they should be resourcing, that they should be being promoted, actively promoted and resourced to be there. The point is made, but just to see that strengthened. I think the point too about the mandatory reconsideration is well made. I think anybody who's been involved in any kind of appeals on people's behalf, and let's be honest, most of the PIP result in an appeal of some description, particularly when it seems as though they don't even read the application in the first place, when you see that some of the people and the conditions that people are dealing with, it's ridiculous. But the mandatory reconsideration as it is just a tick box. There is no reconsideration happening. That's my experience. That's not happening. So I think that that point is well made around the decision makers actually conducting a full case review at that time, because it is just a waste of everybody's time. But just congratulations again. I think others have made some good points there too. But well done to Margaret and the team.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McAleer, did you rejoin us?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me all right now, Chair.
Yep.
Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi seemed to have dropped off just at the perfect timing. No, I got back in there just to hear Councillor Coffey, and from him on there, I've been listening in with intent. I know he made a couple of additional proposals, and I would be happy to second including them. And likewise, I think Councillor Deehan may well have made a proposal in her speech as well. Happy to include that. Having spoken to, I suppose, a number of members of the Disability Action Group and some of our disabled community, it's a very interesting and a very important document, this, and it's one that I would commend the council team and Margaret and her team on the effort and how thorough they've been in responding to this. As previous speakers have said, it's a very impressive and in-depth look at a response here. You know, there's a lot of fear around within the disabled community that people could be financially left worse off, and in turn making a bad situation, or an already bad situation, even worse. And people are concerned about being forced maybe into employment where the workspace or office environment may not even be fully accessible to disabled people to facilitate or enable them to work, and whether indeed disabled people as a result would be penalised for inaccessible workplaces and lack of reasonable adjustments by unwilling employers. And it was suggested that the new disability strategy should be referred to in relation to the issues included in it to make sure there is tie-up. Indeed, one person said to me that if you stick to Article 5 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and dealing with equality and discrimination, you won't go too far wrong. So I'm happy to support and to second the proposals made by Councillor Coffey there. I would also maybe include or suggest that we add, and it's noted in the initial response from the council, the paper A, that the 2.5 there, page 2, states a response from NIHE, the housing executive, and relations to it, which is included in Appendix 2, and the fact that a supporting evidence from a community planning partner, the council may wish to give support to the document. Now, it's a fairly brief document, but I think again it's a fairly positive one. So I would propose or like to see that included, that we do give our backing to that particular document as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, members. We had the overall response proposed by Councillor Warrington. I haven't heard the additions there from Councillor Coffey, Deehan, Hurry and McAleer. Have we somebody who would second that overall, that they're happy with that?
I'll second that, Mark.
Okay, Councillor Bernice Swift, are we happy with that, members? All agreed? Okay, thank you for that. And I'm sure that Margaret and our team will have that updated accordingly. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, 5.2, is to consider the draft consultation response to the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee inquiry into labour shortages in the food and farming sectors, and that's paper B. I think Kim is with us to take this one.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval of a draft submission to the Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs Committee's inquiry into labour shortages in the food and farming sector, and it was agreed at the September meeting of the Brexit Committee that a submission would be prepared on behalf of the Council, and Council powers have been delegated for this item. So the Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs Committee at Westminster has recognised the concerns around labour shortages in the food and farming sector and has launched this inquiry, which focuses around the impacts of factors such as Brexit, COVID-19 and rising commodity prices on the food supply chain. It's a call for evidence on the factors contributing to reports of shortages of food products and workers in key sectors, decline in food exports to the EU and the possibility of food price inflation. The closing date for submissions is this Thursday, the 8th of October. So officers have consulted with the Ulster Farmers Union, NIAPA and local businesses to inform a draft response, which is attached to Appendix 1, and that focuses on the 7 questions which have been posed by the EFRA committee. It highlights the importance of the agriculture and agri-food industry to the Fermanagh and Omagh district and the current challenges which are being experienced in terms of supply of labour and the impact that this is having on farm families, on business sustainability and also on the sustainability of our wider rural communities. So the recommendation is that the draft response outlined at Appendix 1 is supported and submitted to the Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs Committee's inquiry on behalf of the Council by Thursday of this week.
Thank you very much, Kim, for that. A lot of work has went into this one, indeed. And we'll just go to members now. Councillor Wilson is first there.
Yes, Chair. This council not very long ago voted to propose a proposal that stock in the area be reduced by somewhere around 80%. So I don't think there's any point in crying wolf after they have done that. 20% of the land mass of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is really 20% of Northern Ireland land mass is taken up in Omagh and Fermanagh District Council, and most of the agricultural sector is based in the council area. The industry will be decimated whenever this reduction is implemented, so there's no good crying over spilt milk. The industry and the farmers have lost all confidence in their future. The industry has been lambasted by papers and everything else been blamed for all the cause of the climate change. Yet when the planes and cars were grounded during the pandemic, the emissions had dropped vastly. So meal at this minute in time has risen from £200 per tonne to 280 or 300, somewhere in that range. Fertiliser from £240 a tonne to 440. Tractor fuel from 43 pence to 67. A shed 60 by 30 1 year ago would have cost around £7,000 to construct. Now it's costing 12,000. This can't go on because the industry can't absorb these raises. Why would a young farmer even or anybody think of entering the industry? At this minute in time, if you want somebody to help you out on the farm now, it has to be an old age pensioner or somebody like that, because a few years back there would have been young boys would have been fighting to get driving tractors. That's not the way anymore. And 5.2 document by the council clearly states here that the agricultural sector to the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is the backbone of our rural area and communities. but that's not the way the farmers out there see it when they see the way that they are being treated. And there's weather-wise, wet and cold, 7 days a week. They're out, and it's really they're not getting any support from anywhere. And these price rises are I don't know what or how they will be, but I would propose that we call an emergency meeting of our agricultural liaison group and ask maybe even to meet the minister and the farmers union, because if they don't realise what's happening out there, the farmer that has the bills to pay does. So I think that really this is really something that needs to be treated with urgency, not just pushed on down the line. And I would really, the produce that we are putting out is really at a loss, the price of it. And even the abattoirs now are refusing to take stock because they can't get employees, or at least this is the excuse they say, they can't get employees to handle the produce. Pigs especially are building up in houses, and I heard some or seen someone on today on the news where the farmers are saying they may have to destroy the young pigs at birth because they have no houses for to hold them. And Chair, this is really something that needs to be action taken on, not just talk. And as I say, our council has not supported the farmers in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with some of what Bert says. I don't think the council has abandoned the farmers. I take exception to that. I would accept that at all. But going back to the, there's no point in us burying our heads in the sand as far as the environment is concerned either. In my opinion, the farmers will be the solution to this, and when politicians and government gets their act together, the farmers being willing and able to act. As for the consultation, the scarcity of food workers in processing plants and that is a lot of it to do is Brexit, but also a lot of it to do is that this monopoly in food processing plants right across Europe is they're owned by almost the same person or persons. They don't pay enough, and that's why they can't attract workers. So I think that should be emphasised even more strongly, that it's pay that the workers are getting for doing an extremely difficult and hard job should be increased to them. The other thing on number 4, question 4, I think part of the problem is again Brexit, and when the British government then makes deals when we're talking about this food chain, makes deals with New Zealand and Australia and possibly the US and Brazil to come so that they can access markets to sell other goods at the expense of the farming community. They're selling the farming communities out to get into other parts of the economy in these other countries. So they're doing these deals with New Zealand and Australia has already been done, importing lamb and that to on our own. So that's where we are with Brexit. The other thing in number 4, environmental pressures probably is a threat to the food chain. I think farmers again is the solution to the environmental problems. We are ideally positioned in this part of the world with the uplands and our peat bogs and all of that a lot other, if we were funded properly from governments, that we could do an awful lot of work around carbon and all that with our uplands, but it needs to be properly funded. So I'd suggest we add something like that in on item 4. And on 7, that we need a long-term replacement for the cap that has been took away again through Brexit. We're working from year to year. Any business needs to be working at least on a 5 to 10 year cycle ahead of themselves for security and certainty. So that needs to be put to the British government, that they need to get that in place pretty quickly. And I would suggest that we also add in that for the hill farms and which is 90-something% of the land area is less favoured in this Fermanagh and Nome area, that we look immediately for the reinstatement ANC. I know that's probably a devolved matter, but I think we could add it in there as just that there. So them few things.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Anthony Feely.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief. I'm not going to the big poor mouth that it was put in mind of the Poor Farmers Association that Bert was coming out with that. But he's quite right. Yes, everything has got so expensive, and a lot of the materials for building's gone up because of an effect of Brexit, and he's right about all that. But I'm going to be brief. I'm much the same as Seamus there about the question 7. Now we'll have to get something in there about the way how ANC money was cut a few years ago, and it was badly missed, and money that we definitely need. And it's 98% of the land in the area is less favoured area, which is nearly, we say, all the land. Like so. And I just noticed one of the other we're all classified as very small farmers. 83% of us, not just small farmers at 9%, but 83 is small, very small farmers. So that's us all, and we were all getting the ANC money, which is a major factor. So I just like if something like that could be brought in, but I'm not going to go to any of the other details there. Seamus has covered it very well, but as the Brexit is a major problem here with the price of everything going up. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Feely. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a number of issues. I generally find the approach taken here to be quite problematic, because it seems to be basically stating that what's needed is for the agri-food sector to actually have access to workers from elsewhere across the EU so that they can exploit them at lower wages. And I think even the statistics quoted in the paper itself kind of belie the argument that this is actually a case of farmers versus workers. This is primarily an issue of agri-food manufacturing versus workers, and refusing to pay the decent rates that would actually attract people into these industries. On page 3 of the Appendix 1 document, it actually states that only 3% of the total employment on agricultural construction utilities sites is from other EU countries. So only 3%, 97% of the labour force is not actually affected by the anything to do with the Brexit or protocol and whatever. The issue, of course, is in manufacturing, where 10% of the total workforce is from other EU, and that's exactly where we're seeing the pinch occurring. The issues in regard to the lack of young farmers and entrance into the farming sector are related to quite structural factors. It's been ongoing for generations. We've seen a lack of investment, lack of support and training, so on and so forth. So I think that there's a problem for me in terms of how this is set out. It has to be remembered, even within the agri-food and agricultural workers, that 4,300, according to Stormont, are actually unpaid at present, whereas 6,700 are paid and are losing the protections that existed for them under the Agricultural Wages Board, according to the abolition proposed by the DUP minister. I also notice, I don't know who's talking there, but I also noticed that there is an ability to draw down EU workers even at present. But the only obstacle to that is actually paying them a meagre £25,600, which is the threshold for Tier 2 skilled labour. And indeed, some of the employers are saying that they do pay this and that this is not an obstacle. So I think what we need to put, and I'd like to propose that we put a focus here on the need to actually increase wages for workers. This is the way you're going to attract people and increase supports for farming. And I note that we didn't speak to a number of groups. I can't mention one of them, but the other one is very clear to me, is Family Farmers for Action, who are calling for guaranteed gate prices to meet productive inputs to actually remove the need for subsidy over time. And I think groups like that are taking very radical and progressive positions. They support increased wages across the economy, and they represent small farmers who are really struggling at this time. So I'd like to see us engage with organisations like that and others who represent the workers involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, we've just two more speakers indicating, and then we're going to bring this to a close. Councillor John McLaughlin.
Thank you. Obviously, this for some this is a very emotional subject. The likes of Bert there, he's the patriarch of a farm and business involving 3 generations, and wants to secure that for his grandsons and granddaughters, that those of them that wish to enter the business are secured wages. But primarily, this area is affected by the processing industry. The vast majority, as Anthony has pointed out, the size of the farms reflects that. They're usually run by the family, with the father and mother at home farming, the children all out doing jobs, and then coming home and working unpaid on the farm to assist. And that's the way it has been. And there's never going to be the money to secure most of them ever having a full-time employment until the parents pass on, and then somebody takes over the farm. And that's an unfortunate reality, given the size of the farms. But it is primarily the processing industry that is causing all these feedbacks. People are sitting with pigs on farms. Farmers are taking sheep houses, and they've those full of pigs, and those pigs are going to have to be turned out fairly soon, because the early lamb and sheep will be coming in at the end of November, and those houses will be needed. So those pigs are going to have to be destroyed one way or another, should it be into the food industry or just humanely destroyed and disposed of. It's a sad reflection of our country that we're going to be destroying food. This has gone back years. It's partly related to COVID, partly related to Brexit, and partly related to fear. And again, it's the lack of employment. So that's all I have to say on this subject.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eamon Keenan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I'd like to second Don's proposal for paying the proper wages to these workers. And I think I'd also like to include, if it accepts that the council would consult with Trade Union Unite, who represents the workers. I think the talk about labour shortages and possible solutions, that definitely would need to include representatives of the workers, which would be the Union Unite. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McLeod, you did put your hand up after I'd said now, so I just want you to be very brief on this point, please.
Thanks, sure. No, it's just I think this paper, there's the spin that's been put on it is that this is something that's directly impacting small rural family farms, as are the tradition across this district. Whereas the reality, when you read through it, is quite rightly, as Councillor Coffey points out, that it's these large agri-food industrial scale businesses that are the ones that are pressing this point and trying to maintain their hold over paying people less than the minimum or less than the living wage to actually secure migrant work for the period of time that it's needed. There's reference made, a note on page 3 of the report, Appendix 1, that there's similar difficulties in terms of the hospitality and tourism sector in here, which, as the figures given on table 2 shows, is like manufacturing, one that's been hit harder in terms of those workers taken from other EU countries. And I think it's, by and large, it's a reflection of the failure and the unsustainability of the department and Stormont's continued push of going for growth. These projects that are completely unsustainable. And the questions have to be asked, how can it be that farmers and farms across the land are sitting with such numbers of cattle or pigs or whatever it may be, that they are going to, and I'm not going to use the term humanely destroyed, because I don't see how you can destroy something humanely, but that aren't going to be taken into the food production line. I think when we look at the carbon footprint, for example, of soy or meal that's been brought in from the likes of Brazil to be fed to pigs that are then exported to China or wherever, it's a completely unsustainable mode of business, and that needs to be reevaluated. And it references again, I'll finish on this, that in the report it says that the bottom of page 5, bottom of page 4, top of page 5, that demonstrates that the sector is not attracting new and younger employees, and it doesn't bode well for the long-term sustainability of these sectors, leading to inevitably the close of rural farms, rural employment, and the impact that that's going to have on villages and rural communities. These are the lifeblood of our rural communities, and it's part of the policy and part of what's been driven by Stormont that they want to do away with rural farms. They want these monopolies to take over and move in, and I think that's what needs to be challenged at the crux of this, Chair. So happy to support the amendments proposed by Councillor Coffey. Thank you.
Now, members, we need a
Chair,
proposal.
just 1 minute, just Chair. I have no problem if we wish to employees or bring them into the debate. Yes, we depend on them and we work with them, and in general they're treated to a decent wage, and the same, I know on my own farm they get the same treatment as I get. So that is something that I believe. I don't want anybody to think that they're being underpaid or not treated as they should be, because they are.
Yes. Okay, Councillor, thanks for that clarity. Now, members, we do need, we've had a few suggestions, proposals, and I'm sure they've all been recorded. We had a specific proposal from Councillor Coffey around an increased wage for workers, that be included, seconded by Councillor Keenan. Now, we need a proposer and a seconder for the overall response. Councillor Robertson has his hand. And
Chair, I made a proposal that we have an emergency.
Yes, Councillor. I'll get back to that, Councillor. Just bear with us. So, are members happy that the draft consultation response is proposed and seconded with the additional comments and that proposal by Councillor Coffey? Are we all agreed on that, members? Okay, now Councillor Wilson did make a specific proposal at the start that there was a meeting arranged of the Agricultural Liaison Group, emergency meeting,
I
and
want
that.
to second that, please, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, I forgot to second.
Oh no, that's great, and that's seconded now, members. That there is an emergency meeting called of the Agricultural Liaison Group. That the Minister for DERA does be invited along with Ulster Farmers Union, and that has been seconded. Our members agreed.
Chair, if I could just note, if you don't mind, that the next
Yes,
meeting of the Agriculture Liaison Group is already scheduled for Thursday, the 4th of November. So if members wish to extend an invitation to the Minister for that, we could certainly add that.
Yep.
Action that in advance of that date.
Are members agreeable? Yep, I see thumbs
Chair,
up there. So,
Chair,
Councillor,
could I a slight amendment to that, or a slight inclusion, just given what's been passed unanimously previously there, that there was no reference to the Agricultural Workers Representative Trade Union who represent them on the Agricultural Wages Board. Could they be included in that invitation, as well as the department and the various farming lobbying bodies, please?
Yes. Our members agreed that they be included in that invitation.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's all, members. That will be arranged, and then people will be invited to the next meeting of the Agricultural Liaison Committee. Thank you, members.
Chair, can I just clarify one thing?
Very quick, Councillor, please.
No, it was just, I thought that when we are discussing these consultations that each of us, if we have any input to put into them, suggest changes and that. I didn't know we had formally proposed and second them, because I believe I had said about the processor's not paying enough on that, and then Councillor Coffey came in with the exact same thing, and then it was seconded. But I didn't. Is that the format that we need if we are making suggestions to consultations, that's what we have to do anymore, or
Maybe,
is there a bit of grandstanding here?
Maybe that's my mistake now, Councillor, but I do assure you that your comments would be included as well now, and Kim would have taken that on board. Are you happy enough with that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Okay, members, thank you for that. We'll move on now to item 6, which is the Environment and Place Directorate Reports. 6.1 is to consider report on ancient cemetery signage, paper C. Celine. Thank you, Celine.
Chair, members, this is a paper that follows on from a previous report to Council and to Committee in December 19, and it is really focused on the signage and naming arrangements for the ancient cemeteries which the Council has responsibility for. The proposals are set out there. They have been consulted upon. The detail is there as proposed, and the recommendation is as set out on page 3, section 8, that the Council approves the format for the signage and the proposed naming of listed ancient cemeteries as identified, and notes that where sites have been clearly legally established, not being in the ownership of Mananoma District Council, signs won't be installed or removed if already in place until that is fully clarified.
Thank you very much, Celine. We have seen the report, members, and there is some graphic images there, or images of the graphics and the signs for your attention as well. So first is Councillor Donald Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to propose what's before us, just with one caveat, really, and that is this is I think it's absolutely essential our ancient cemeteries bring everyone together. You know, it stretch right across our communities and different heritage and so on. But I just wonder if it's possible to, there's a natural linkage between this and, say, for example, the local townlands and so on. So I'm wondering, is it possible to have that cultural linguistic diversity reflected in the signage insofar as, you know, I'm looking at Temple and Afrin there and so on. Is it possible to have these in a way that would accommodate a recognition of the ancient nature of them and the linguistic origins? So I'm just really looking if that's possible to be inserted, and I hope everyone would see that would be a positive move that would celebrate everyone's identity here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coffey. Councillor McLaughlin was next just there, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was coming in on a similar vein to Councillor Coffey, only maybe with a slightly different slant. Obviously, these are the council-controlled sites. There are other ancient graveyards within the county and within the Omagh side as well that aren't under council control. And obviously, I would like to see some form of inclusion of those at some stage, if only in a map of the ancient sites within the county. As regards the signage and the linguistic diversities that Councillor Coffey refers to, I'm wondering, would it be possible for officers to do research into whether it's possible to fund the placing of a QR code, which would direct people to an internet site on their phone that then they could select which language or which types of language they want to include the information that Councillor Coffey had referred to. I know we want to keep the signs as simple as possible. They're going to be, a lot of them, in rural and exposed areas. And we don't want them too intrusive on the landscape, but a QR code would give people access to vast amounts of information linked to all the sites, and I was wondering, would that be something that officers could consider?
Thank you.
That's the proposal.
Thank you. This proposal, okay. Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Garley, thanks, Chair. Again, similar vein to Councillor Coffey, and I believe there is an existing policy within the council, going back to the first mandate, where all council facilities would have a bilingual sign, like the Forum and the Brenran Cemetery in the town here, and indeed the Cross. And all council buildings are supposed to have bilingual signage by that existing policy, as to the best of my knowledge. So again, I believe that if the council is putting up signs, that policy should be reflected in these new signage. Obviously, it secures the town lands, and it also would give it in its original Gaelic form, Gallocher and all the rest of them, that is all part of our cultural heritage and identity stuff that we've been working on. I'm aware there's a new policy and document coming through, but I still believe that old policy is in place, and the signs should be bilingual. Remember the historical dispute about the Irish language being put in a smaller font, and it cost us many thousands to correct. So maybe if we get it right at the start, it might see if coming back afterwards again. Chair, Robert
Irvine.
Yep, I take on board what Councillor Maguire said, and I do believe in the first mandate there was an issue with that. I think take on board also what my colleague Councillor Clockery has said. I think some of these sites are exposed, and more information is too much. I mean, less is more. So I think I would second his proposal in regard to QR codes, because most people nowadays, particularly of a younger generation, don't want to read. They want to use on their phone. And should we actually have that and possibility look at the idea of link to the network, so when people come out, because basically how many people you see even walking up the main street, and they're not looking ahead of themselves, they're looking at the west, either left or right, because it's a mobile phone. And I think if we use that medium, we actually might connect a bigger audience, and from a point of view of tourism, it would be of great benefit. I also see it as possibly not being overly expensive, but we would need to investigate the cost as well. So I second Councillor McClockery's proposal.
And finally is Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Margaret Kyerley, yes, and I would be supportive of what Councillor Tommy Maguire has said about the policy around bilingual signage. I mean, again, this seems to be the same debate, but why do we accept the Sax Berla, the anglicised version of the original Gaelic names for the vast majority sites? And we're looking at some of the ones there, like for example, Kinolly, Killesher. Kill literally means church with a graveyard. Lesher's church, Nollia's church. The original Irish offers not only more information, but more of a linguistic and a cultural connection to the place, which I think is extremely important. That we shouldn't just allow that to be lost. There's other sites there. We have Devonish, Dalvinish, Oxford Island. So again, I think the rich heritage there is to be valued and should be promoted. Aherlurher, the field of the cast, coming from the original Irish again. So, the majority of these places have been named in Irish, were then anglicised. They weren't even translated, they were anglicised from the original Irish. So again, I think the original and correct spelling should be put up. So I'd be supportive of the bilingual signage, and if that needs to be, I think Councillor Maguire did make the proposal, so I'd just be happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. Well, members, the way I have it, Councillor Coffey made a proposal. Would that be in line with Councillor Maguire? Second that.
Charlie, my point was not a proposal. It was a reminder of an existing policy within the council that graveyards and council buildings are already and should be bilingual.
And you're happy to second?
So as it's with that reminder that is the policy of the council that I'm indicating that these signs should have a bilingual.
Okay, thank you.
Copy on them, So I don't believe a proposal was necessary for that, but if indeed it is required, if the officer indicates, I will make that proposal, but I don't think a proposal on top of what is an existing council policy is necessary.
Chair, if I may just comment on the points raised, just first of all to clarify that all of the existing council facilities do, all new signage that's installed and all signage that was installed whenever the new council organisation was established is in the bilingual format. This is a slightly different set of considerations. It's assets that we have inherited through an old piece of legislation. As the paper sets out, there is a mix of signage there at the moment, and also there are some hazards and health and safety issues that have to be considered. The proposal that is in front of you here, which is not for bilingual signage, but it is the proposal that stems from consultation that has been carried out with the list of consultees that's provided at the appendix. The suggestion that we should look at a QR code is very valid, but I would say that that takes us into a different realm of I suppose, of information, over and above just installing signage. That it is possible and feasible to develop a QR code, but the issue then is collating the historical and all of the relevant information onto a database and also then maintaining that. So I would say that takes the project in a further direction. In the absence of of agreement in terms of the issue of bilingual signage, in terms of the consultation that has been proposed, I would suggest that we would take this away and do some further work on it and see if there's any alternative proposals that our consultees would consider in that respect. So, but that is at risk of the fact that we don't have good safety signage in all of these areas at the moment. But I think that's that would reflect the different views expressed so far.
Thank you, Celine. Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Carly, if I'm correct in what I took from Celine there, there's some suggestion that these signs, because they've been given to us at a later date, that they don't monitor what is an existing policy of the council. That leaves me slightly confused, slightly disappointed, and again, not for the first time where a policy that we thought we had changed and established as a policy of the council, that in the outworkings of some of the officers and indeed the council workers, we have to remind officers that there is a policy in place. So is it a case that somebody was unaware of this policy when signage was mentioned, or is there not an automatic thought within the outworkings of these issues that if there is an existing policy, it must be considered? Because it appears to me that that policy has been totally ignored. That means that the best efforts of members in this chamber to establish a policy is being ignored, and that I would find very serious. I know that we're after engaging in a further outworkings of a new policy with all our minority languages being considered, worked out by all members in the representative working groups, and to find that after putting all that effort in to draw up a policy, that then when we're presented with signage of any description, that the policy has either been ignored or not taken into consideration, that's worrying in the outworkings of the council. And one would question, why are we being asked to attend working groups to establish policies, and then when we're presented with an issue like this, the policy seems to have been ignored? I'm very concerned about that, Chair, I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chair, just again to conclude on this, the policy has not been ignored. As stated, these are ancient cemetery sites which are listed in the schedule vested by the Commissioners of the Church of Ireland, which have transferred to the Council. There has been an extensive consultation process that has been carried out through our Cultural and Wellbeing section, and these are the proposals that have come forward from that as what would be the proposed information, the signage that would be included. But as already suggested, I think it's something that we'll just have to take away again and reflect a stronger requirement of the bilingual signage on these, which may cause some difficulties in the areas that the signs are being put up, and that's the practical outworkings of the consultation to date.
Okay, members, a sense that there will be not full agreement on this. Councillor Curry, I'll let you in very quick just, and then we'll decision on it.
Margaret Carley, can I just request that we have a report back on the status of our Irish language or bilingual signage, however you want to phrase it, What is the status of that in the council? And I fully support Collier McGear's comments here. What is the point? What's the point of us putting all this work and effort in, coming up with policies that don't then factor into the final decision? I mean, I take it that a decision is yet to be made on this, but the idea that us bringing up a policy that should have been considered already is going to hold things up is really unacceptable. So just like that back, Gurmaga.
Is there a seconder for that proposal made by Councillor Curry?
And Carly.
Councillor Maguire, I'll take it from Councillor Maguire there. Just okay, members. So we've two proposals. We have a proposal by Councillor Coffey, and could I have a seconder for that, please?
Chair, I believe that Councillor Coffey's proposal was to accept these and consider further linguistic diversity. Yes. I think the debate has moved on in terms of that, and that I wouldn't be sure that there is that acceptance.
Okay. So, and we had a separate proposal from Councillor McLaughlin, which was seconded by Councillor Irvine, that we look into the use of the QR code. Now, Celine has explained that would take us into a different realm as well.
But it can be done, Chair,
But
yes.
it can be done. So I do actually believe that's the first one that was second, member. So I think that we should maybe put that to the chamber. And I think the easiest way to do it is through the voting system. So if Damien's happy enough. So the proposal is by Councillor John McLaughlin, seconded by Councillor Irvine, that we would look at this and the idea of bringing a QR code system into the signage, and that'll be brought back. That'll be a report to look at. Celine, is that correct? Well, we're going to put that to a vote. Just Councillor, if members are agreed, we'll just put that to a vote.
Can I ask for clarification? Just
clarification.
Yeah, it's just I don't necessarily see a contradiction between having a Q code and bilingual signage. So I'm just wondering, or multilingual signage, whichever. I don't necessarily see a contradiction between them, and I just want to see clarification if that is, because I'm happy with additional information on a Q code. I think it's an excellent idea, but I don't necessarily see how that would directly contradict what I was proposing initially. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I can take you back, that the recommendation is to approve the format of the signage and the proposed naming of the listed ancient cemeteries as identified in the appendices, which is not reflective fully of bilingual signage at this point in time. So therefore, I'm saying that would have to be withdrawn, and that recommendation need further consideration. In so doing, we can also look at the QR code issue, which will require other technical support and backup to do it. So that, as I say, is a different scope and scale of project. And the other proposal then is a further proposal on a report back on a bilingual signage report on the status in the council.
Okay. Councillor Maguire, just before sorry, Councillor.
Again, Chair, and sorry for interrupting again, but like Councillor Coffey, I didn't see a contradiction in the QR code proposal, and obviously my reflections that a policy has been overlooked in the preparation is, so for that reason I would have thought that the recommendation would have been withdrawn, but the investigation of the QR code is certainly something I think we'd all agree with, Chair.
Just bear with us 1 minute, members, please. Talked with the officers. My feeling on it is that there would be a general agreement to look into the QR code from the room and the members on WebEx. Now there won't be agreement on the recommendation tonight, and there's been a proposal that's been seconded to bring back a report as well on the Irish language element of that. So I believe the recommendation needs to be looked at, as this is what's coming out of the meeting tonight. Our members' agreement, would we have agreement that this be brought back, a future report, or does members want to vote on what is before us this evening? Councillor McCaffrey is indicating there.
No, apologies, Chair, that's from earlier.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Curry.
Remarkable, Carly. No, just for clarification, around the Irish language, yeah, it should have been looked at here. What I was looking for was a report as to why that is not happening and where is that falling in the council. That's what I would like to see a report on. Remarkable.
Okay. So our members agreed that we bring this back to a future meeting with that report included. Can I have a proposal to that?
Agreed.
Councillor Irvine,
Proposed,
please.
Chair.
Agreed. So proposed, Chair.
Councillor Irvine proposed and seconded. I think I heard Councillor Deehan there. Our members agreed on that. Is any dissent? Okay, thank you, members. Revisit that. The next report, 6.2, members, is to consider report on estates matters, paper D.
Chair, members, monthly report on various estates matters that have been progressed in the council with issues for decision set out at point 2. Number of general estates issues as well, then request for use of council property and reference to the council property report and request for additional support in relation to that. And then at item 3, the key issues for information. And there is 3 of those. The extensive recommendations are set out on pages 6 and 7 at point 9 of the report.
Thank you, Celine, for that. And members, we've seen the report and the recommendations. First person indicating is Councillor McElduff, please.
Thank you, Chair. One element I want to comment on, and thanks, Celine, for the reference to Youth Sport OMA. And I just know they have particular plans for the future, and that's a procedural issue there which empowers them, to make an application to the council for capital support in the future, without prejudice to outcome. But as a procedural issue tidied up by Celine there, and thank her for that. Thank you, Chair.
Are you happy to propose that, Councillor McElduff?
Yes, happy to propose that, yes.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Next speaker is Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, and I'll come in a second. I'm just glad to see at 2.3 there the Belcoo lay-by, a bit of work being done on it, and a park bench and stuff going in there. So great to see that. And 2.6.1 the more filming at the Marble Arch Caves, which is very good for the area, and the cycling is going to be taking place in Lochnavar Forest on Saturday, 9th of October. So very happy to second the recommendation.
Thanks. That's proposed and seconded. Thank you. Are we all agreed, members? Next speaker is Councillor Victor Warrington.
Yeah, well, it's been proposed and seconded. Just want to offer my support on that. Obviously on item 2.2, where the shed at Killafodle Lake that has been presently used by the Maherville Community Development Association. They're doing great work up in that area at the minute, and it's good to see that being moved forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and just want to discuss quickly just the issue around 2.5 and the district gateway signage. I mean, all of this is very welcome. I just wonder if there's any clarity at this stage just in terms of the time frame on that. And I welcome the progress that's been made to date in regard to this.
Thank you.
Chair, there's no definitive time scale on that. We do have obviously signage in place, and we've had some temporary signage arrangements, which has had the I suppose the COVID recovery messaging there. but it will be progressed, and any particular issues will be reported and, hope within reason progressed at some speed.
Thank you,
you,
Celine, for
Chair.
that clarity. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, members, we'll move on to the next item, 6.3, is to consider report on contingency arrangements for town centre snow ice clearance, the Department of Infrastructure Memorandum of Understanding, Paper E.
Chair, members, this is an extension of a current arrangement which applies really in the context of contingency, where there are extreme winter weather events affecting our towns. The summary of the key issues is set out at item 2.1 and 2.2. It's noted that the Council has authority to enter these type of joint working arrangements under sections 104 and 105 of the Local Government Act. There's also of note there, just to draw members' attention to 2.4, which highlights some recent engagement that we've had with a number of representatives from DFI Roads, trying to reflect current issues that we feel are relevant, and also hopefully to reflect some of the issues that have been raised by councillors in the chamber. There's details of some of those arrangements there, and there will be further ongoing communication and engagement with DFI, which may lead to a more comprehensive memorandum of understanding setting out respective responsibilities in relation to issues there. In particular, on this winter gritting arrangements, we have inquired and asked about the extent and scope of the winter gritting programme. It is resource constrained, and that is a factor. So therefore, if we propose additional areas, then we do have to, suggest what other areas could be given up in lieu of that. Also comments there around the rural winter grit provision and the encouragement from DFI to respond to any requests for replenishment where those are from elected members and others where those are reported through the normal channels. So the recommendation is that the Council approves the Memorandum of Understanding between DFI Roads and Fermanagh Noma District Council for clearing busy town centre footways and pedestrian areas of snow and ice as set out in the appendix.
Thank you, Celine, for that report. And again, members, if you can keep your comments brief. Thank you. Councillor Howard Thornton is first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm quite happy to propose the recommendation that it is. I welcome it, and these memorandums of understanding are very important, as Selina said. At an earlier special council meeting, I had made reference to the grass cutting and more or less a workshop, but I would hope with this report, as it's stated in 2.4, that we're working towards a memorandum of understanding with regard to grass cutting, so that councillors have a clear understanding of whose responsibility is what. And but I welcome what Selina's saying, and hopefully further work can be continued to make sure we know whose responsibility is what through memorandums of understanding, especially with DFI. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this. I also echo the points being made there by Councillor Thornton. This is good to see for coming forwards. I think that from the look of the last time, I think the road coverage was not as extensive as this one, and I think we raised issues around the need to try and connect more into the estates, and I particularly welcome the fact now we're covering up to the Darren Road section. We could always look for more, I'm sure, but I think it is useful to see this proceed. There's one issue I wanted just to raise. I note under 2.4 that we engaged with the department and road service on signage and flags in particular. And it's an issue I think we're not really dealing with, and it's a major issue that's constantly raised with me, workers, visitors, and so on. I'm not particularly, I recognize everyone has a right to raise their flag and so on. But why do we not, as a council, take a position on this? We need to enforce a policy in our county towns on to ensure the flying of flags does not actually act either to intimidate or to discourage visitors and trade and the beautification of our town centres and the success. I'd like to see something happen around that. So I'd like to propose that we have some form of a report on maybe the outworkings of that discussion we had with the DFI roads on the issue of flags in particular, and also what powers the council would have, for example, under the power of general competency to take action to ensure that anyone that's flying flags does so with respect to all other sections of the community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so that's the report proposed and seconded, members, by Councillor Hurd Thornton and Councillor Donald Coffey.
Chair, I can come back just on two issues there, perhaps further comment on Councillor Thornton's inquiry about grass cutting. That was a particular area of discussion, and I mean, I was pleased with the response from the DFI officials, and we are going to go into some negotiations around perhaps some contribution towards the work that the council already undertakes in some areas, but we will report the outworking of that. The discussion on the issue of flags, I suppose there is legislation there in terms of the Clean Neighbourhoods Enforcement Act, which would be relevant to signage and to some degree flags. The department did highlight again resource issues. We'd proposed that it should, a joint effort in this area could see a lot of not just the controversial flags, but also a lot of additional signage that is in our district and neighbourhood over I suppose a concerted effort over a period of time could try and get that all dealt with. The issue of resource constraints was very relevant again, but the DFI officials said that they do try to deal on a case-by-case basis and with a particular focus on any issues that are contentious. Equally, there are procedures and arrangements for that in place, and it does require the PSNI involvement when appropriate.
Thanks for that, Celine. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you very much, Carly, and well, in response to Councillor Coffey's remarks in relation to the flags, as I'm sure most of us are aware, we have raised this issue over many, many years. We are all waiting on a report that stalled in Belfast that cost something like £800,000 to come forward with recommendations to deal with these thorny issues. And I'm aware that a party colleague has indeed communicated with the council, waiting for their response in relation to what the council is going to do about it. It's a disgrace that the entrance to our town is branded in such a way that does not properly reflect the demographics of the town we live in, nor is it welcoming to a sizable amount of people, and indeed a majority in this area that we live in, that when they drive into the town that it's bedecked with sectarian flags, UVF flags, and indeed national flags that everyone will say that that's a flag of their nation, etc., etc. But I think we're all aware in this part of the world that that is contentious, it's upsetting, it's wrong. It does not feel welcoming to people coming into the town, especially we're reminded when there's a GA match going on that we have visitors from all over Ireland, and the first welcome they get coming into our lovely island town is rows and rows of sectarian flags and like. I have voiced it several times. I've made my best endeavours to get flags and banners removed as best I could. It's a thorny issue, but again, and I think I've said it before, we do need support from our unionist colleagues in here to make some representations with the people that put these flags up to remove them. And I think we've all said here before that we're not about declining people's identity, but a considered display at a particular culturally relevant time is not something we have tried to stifle. But this continually 52 weeks of the year bedecking of the town with bigger and bigger flags, as if once they're told to take them down, they get away and get a bigger one. And I must particularly complain about the UVF flag that is flying outside the tech. I know it comes in under the guise of a commemorative flag. They slipped it in as an anniversary flag. It still has the badge of a murderous terrorist outfit that put many of our people in early graves. It doesn't reflect a history. It reflects intimidation. And I think that I reflect well enough the thoughts of people in my constituency. So again, I would call on unions colleagues to make their best efforts. I would call on the council through their good relations to make their best efforts. And again, I would call on Stormont to get that package out so that we get some direction. The PSI and the DFI are continually saying we cannot do it because it may incite some disharmony or some problem. The fact that they're flying there is creating enough disharmony, and it's not reflective of the good relations we have in this town, and that's what further exasperates the situation. So again, please make your best endeavours and ask your people to take them down.
Sean, in here.
Chair, just in relation to what has been said in relation to flags, members have spoken. Yes, it is a very emotive issue. But just in relation to the flags that are currently exist in Enniskillen at this point in time, our good relations team have been working on the ground and working very, very hard in order to come to a resolution of it. And I can report, or hopefully, that within the next 2 weeks that we will see a removal of those flags, and because discussions are going on very well with those up the flag. So it's a very sensitive issue, it's a very emotive issue, but I can assure you that work is going on in the background, and quite substantive work in order to resolve the issue. And I hope that we can report at the next meeting that all is in hand. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. This discussion has took a slightly different turn than here in snow and Enniskillen. But anyway, I'll go back to I would agree with everything Councillor Maguire said there. But anyway, I'll go back to the clearing of snow in Enniskillen and Omagh. Sometimes I be perplexed by our council and the road service and everything. I am delighted that this understanding has been made between the road service and the council for Enniskillen and Omagh. But is our council for Man and Omagh District Council, or is it a council for the greater Enniskillen and Omagh area? Because as far as I'm aware, has there been an agreement made for Lisnaskea or Maguire's Bridge or Brookborough or any other place where the vast majority of our people live? That's not in Enniskillen or Omagh, and I am delighted Enniskillen and Omagh that this. Don't get me wrong, that I'm begrudging them this, but it's that everywhere else is an afterthought. In fact, it's an afterthought of an afterthought. In fact, there's no thought at all, and this is one of the reasons why I suggested a bit of rural affairs, or as I asked at the beginning, a rural inequalities subcommittee to be formed. But I was talked out of that name. But I think it's very prevalent in this here, where we be making decisions, urban areas seem to get priority over rural. And the only two urban areas we have is Omagh and Enniskillen. And road service and the council seems to have prioritised them over everywhere else. So I would like, don't want to disagree with this, but I'd like a bit of equality for the rest of us who pay every bit as much rates and road tax, and in fact more fuel tax and everything because we're further away from services. So I just want to note that, and I actually want an answer from the officers. Was anywhere else even give a thought when this agreement was being agreed or been proposed to being agreed?
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Chair, members, I mean, as I've stated in the report, we did engage with DFI officials on the proposals, and we did highlight the members' concerns around rural issues, and the response was along the lines of resource constraints being particularly prevalent, about working within existing budgets which were available, and you know, with the scope to move, but it would be by taking away some of the proposed areas, and I suppose for ourselves there are, you know, the resources that we would be putting towards this would be really the street cleansing resources. If they weren't involved in street cleansing activity, that they would be assisting with snow clearance, which I suppose is a different type of street cleansing. So I have no definitive answer for the member in terms of being able to extend this programme on a whole-scale basis. It is based on throughput of footfall, and that's I suppose the higher risk areas that have been identified based on footfall, not necessarily other criteria or conditions.
Well, could I just follow on that? And I think that was what the Rural Affairs Subcommittee was formed to deal with, is that from Celine's answer there, I take it that this wasn't even an issue raised. The other issues that has been brought up about rural areas was raised, and that's great. But actually, the fact that this agreement was made for Enniskillen and Omagh, and the others wasn't, the other places like Irvinstown and Lisnaskea and all the other places didn't even come into the equation, didn't even come into the conversation. I think that's where the question of inequality and discrimination against rural comes in. And I feel very strongly about it. I'm delighted for Enniskillen and Omagh, but please don't forget about the rest of us.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. We have Councillor Curry indicating there.
Gormagada Carley, and thanks to Councillor Green there mentioning Irvinstown, because I was thinking about it too. You know, a busy town there, and you know, a lot of our local businesses are up against it after the last 18 months that they've had. You know, and you would like things to be as easy as possible for people out and about. It's the comment from the Department for Infrastructure around budgetary constraints and resource constraints, and that's a response every single time we hear from them. And we all know there's been over a decade of cuts coming from the Tory government, cuts of the block grant, and we all know that departments are up against it. But departments have the option to prioritise budgets, and providing some salt for the footpaths of Lisnaskea and Irvinstown, I don't think is going to break the bank for the department ourselves. You know, there's various glamour projects, I would say, going on. None of them are west of the ban, as far as I can see it. So I don't buy it. I think we're all getting a little bit tired of this response. We know things are tight, we know things are tough, and there's some big decisions coming up for the executive as a whole on where money is spent. But just to bring it into every little thing about sprinkling a bit of salt on the footpaths, I think is wandering into the realms of ridiculousness. I think we should probably revisit it at the Rural Affairs Subcommittee and maybe raise something from that committee there.
Okay, thank you. Would you make that a proposal, Councillor?
Yeah, I would make that proposal.
Thank you. Now, members, we do have this report proposed and seconded, and there's a lot of speakers looking in on it yet, and we're approaching 9 o'clock, so we would like you to keep your comments very, very short. Next speaker on the list is Anthony Feely.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief. Before I forget, I'm going to second Siobhan's proposal there. No, I just want to thank my colleague, Councillor Tommy Way, bringing up that issue about flags. Well, I know he didn't bring it up, he mentioned that I was going to come in on the same as Seamus, but just couldn't agree more with what Tommy said there. And I welcome John Boy's report there that there will be something done in the next week or two. The quicker the better for us, just disgraceful coming into our county town. No, I was the exact same as Seamus there, but Seamus got overall. I don't expect them come down and clear the footpaths in Garrison or Belcourt, Aragon, you know, them rural towns that I represent. But I would love if they would, and I know it's not possible to do every town. But the way they're just leaving out the whole of the rural towns, even Listenski and Evanstown, I just think it's just absolutely disgraceful. So I'm glad that Siobhan has made that proposal. But one thing I am glad to see on 2.41 about, and it's an issue that I did bring up last year about these grit pays and the quality of them. So I'm glad that that has been mentioned here, and we will look into that too. Even as little as we get, later, if they give us some good grit when they do something first, instead of the stuff they're bringing out them last lucky years and not bringing it out till it's too late. So I think we'll have to keep on top of this and make sure that the same issues not raised this winter, as well as flay tipping. I see them mentioned too. So I'm just glad that we looked into some of them issues that we have brought up. But that's all I say. But I just
Thank you,
second
Councillor. That's okay. Councillor Eamon Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to second Donald's proposal on bringing a report on the council's ability to see if we can act under the powers of the general competency and to tackle the flag issue. Yeah, I know John Boyle said that we're 2 weeks' time we'll be taking the flags down, but we're 10 months into the year and they've been flying all year round then at Skilling, and now the UVF flags are up, and there's a lot of anger, and it's causing uneasy unrest that nobody feels comfortable. As Tommy quite rightly said, the UVF to many is a criminal gang who murdered people across the north for many years. The other thing is Seamus, fully agree. Last winter, Listenski there's got Celine talks of footfall. I think there's over 800 students, and actually the lollipop lady stopped me, and there was children slipping and sliding. There was an ice rink from Lidl's, from Carrasheed to Lidl's down to the school. There's a lot of children there, and they couldn't walk on it. And I think it's a disgrace that Listenski's been left out, especially with all those students. It's actually a danger. You have parents and children falling out on the road, and I'd like that definitely to be included in the memorandum.
Okay, Councillor.
Chair, if I could just clarify that the relevant legislation, it's not something that needs to be progressed under the general power of competency. It's the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act that is the relevant piece of legislation there. The powers do exist, but they exist. It depends on where the offending item is. And whose property it's on. If it's on the council's property, we have the authority to act and remove it, and we have done that on a number of occasions. If it's on DFI property, which is a lot of the lampposts, then it is up to them, and then that is progressed. We ask them to deal with it, and then they will, if it is a contentious issue, often the PSNI will be involved. So I don't know if it's something that we can progress through the general power of competency because it's already covered by other legislation.
Okay, thanks for that clarity, Celine. Councillor Josephine Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Celine and her team for bringing forward this report. I do welcome this memorandum of understanding between the Council and DFI Roads. This is a very positive development which is necessary in the interests of public safety. The issue of impacted snow and ice on our footways is a very serious one. Members will be aware of the impact of falls, particularly in the elderly, which can result in fractured hips, which can often prove fatal in this vulnerable group. So we're talking public safety, and anything as a council that we can do to enhance and improve public safety is welcome. In relation to Omagh Town, I welcome the areas identified. I note the priority 1 and priority 2 areas. I want to briefly mention an area that has been raised with DFI Roads on numerous occasions, and that is at the residential parks in our town. And in Omagh, we have many of these which are very, very hilly. Unfortunately, we have had no joy from DFI Roads. The best they can offer as an alternative to clearing footways and pathways in residential parks is to increase the provision of salt bins. There is a dangerous issue here, Chair, and that is where you have very steeply graded roads approaching main roads. And I could quote many examples of those junctions where in the frost and snow, vehicles can actually slide out onto the path of oncoming traffic. And I would like to propose, Chair, that we examine those areas where there are high levels of danger and to see whether or not they could also be included in this schedule. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Victor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I certainly I agree with a lot of what's been said on the towns outside of Enniskillen and Omagh being forgot about, and certainly would agree that that needs to be looked at in more depth. I disagree with some of the terminology that's been used here tonight. Words like disharmony surrounding the flags issue in Enniskillen. As we all know, we are celebrating 100 years of Northern Ireland in existence, and I know certainly members of the nationalist and Republican community don't recognise that, but we on the unionist side of things certainly very much do. And at the end of the day, because of COVID, we were unable to have the celebrations that was planned, and possibly the flags are there for that reason. Basically, if I was driving down to through the Republic of Ireland and came across a range of flags relating to that country, I wouldn't have a problem, because at the end of the day, we're in a different jurisdiction. And I know a lot of people from the unionist community regularly visit Southern Ireland to holiday and to do different trips. And at the end of the day, if we really want to get into this debate on flags yet again, we all know regularly when we drive down through Kilmaccormick, down that road onto the roundabout down there, we're subject to different flags throughout the year, Palestinian flags, tricolours and whatever. And so if we want to use the word disharmony, then we can use it there as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, now members, I would like the final few speakers to be brief till we get the meeting moved on. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. Well, as a rural ratepayer, like a lot of farmers and people that live out in the rural areas, we pay our rates. So we expect some service in the winter time. And school buses travel around our roads lifting children, and their health and safety is at stake as well. So I can't understand why there's meal lorries, collection vehicles of all kinds, and I would expect some service for the rates that we pay, and there's quite a lot of dwellings out in the countryside paying rates. Grit piles as well. I would like to see them out in early November, not in January, February time when the winter's nearly over, as often happens. As I say, we are ratepayers and we deserve a service. As far as Eamon was saying about people being murdered, there was people from different murdered by different organisations. So I think he should think what he's speaking before he goes any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green, you've already been in now, so I'll just go to Councillor Elliott first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll not be long. It's just in relation to the flying of the flags in Enniskillen. You know, as Councillor Warrington has stated, obviously the year that's in it, the centenary year, the flags are flying, suppose that a wee bit longer this year now that they haven't been up all year. Normally every other year the flags go up in July time, they come down in September. But as I say, as Councillor Warrington also said, you have the Cornergrade Road where we have pictures of hunger strikers, and we have flags flying there all year round. And I just want Councillor Maguire, maybe is he talking about all the flags in Enniskillen? Because I know there as well, you drive through Darlin at the minute, and there's Irish flags on every lamppost as you drive through Darlin. So is this just unionist flags in certain parts of Enniskillen that the council's worried about, or is this all the flags?
including the flags in Darylin and the Cornergrade Road. Thank you.
Councillor McElduff is next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on the flags issue, I have written till a director within the council or director regarding the possibility of developing a flags protocol for the council area. You know, respect for the flag, because those that are flying flags all year round aren't necessarily respecting, you know, the rules or protocol of a flag. And for example, I identify with the Irish national flag, of course I do. But, you know, typically we tend to put that up and take it down respectfully after a short period and in association with an event like Easter or whatever. But I'll move on from the flags issue, but just to remind the council that there is a suggestion on the table for good relations and councillors and everybody else to consider the development of a flags protocol in the future based on respect. And in the Greencastle community, that was initiated some years ago. At the crossroads in Greencastle, there is a tablet there, you know, at the crossroads, which details the rules of the flag and talks about respect for the flag, when it should be put up, when it should be taken down, how it should be disposed of when tattered, all that kind of thing. So a flags protocol is something I would like the council to investigate. But in relation to, you know, ice and snow and housing estates within Omagh, for example, and I'm sure the same in Enniskillen and other towns and villages, you know, the housing executive might be open to, and I would propose that we write to the housing executive manager locally, Helen Hicks, asking Helen to clarify if there are community support grants available through the housing executive for the installation of salt boxes in those housing estates which do not meet the gradient criteria for DFA roads. You know, O'Kane Park is an obvious one to me in Omagh, where they've wanted and applied for salt box through DFA roads. They say it doesn't meet the criteria, but I'm of the belief that housing executive would award community grants in that case. So I think it'd be good to enter into correspondence on this one to get that affirmative answer, you know, in writing from the housing executive. And thirdly, I would have considerable sympathy for the points made by Councillor Green earlier regarding rural areas needing to be included in these protocols. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members. Councillor McAleer and then finally Councillor Donnelly.
Yes, Chair, and I was going in there on something that Councillor Michael Duff has just spoken on. 20 years next February, the Greencastle community organised the Greencastle Community Initiative, which dealt with the issue of flags and I suppose getting flags off lampposts and telegraph poles, and by having that one central location where the flag is raised at dawn and taken down at dusk, it's definitely added to the community in the centre of Greencastle. And I know actually that the men behind that have actually been approached by members of different communities, different political parties, including your own, Chair, from a number of different council areas, in the hope of maybe replicating something similar in their areas. So it's something that's very positive, and I think if that's brought forward, it could ease a lot of the tensions that have been discussed primarily in Enniskillen at the minute. I would have to just raise an objection to a couple of speakers there that tried to compare or draw similarities to the flying of national flags such as the Irish flag or the Palestinian flag to the flags of terrorist organizations like the UVF. I don't think there's any comparison there, and I would like to just record that. But my final point is in relation to the issue at hand, I suppose, and that's, as Councillor Green quite rightly states, the focus seemingly constantly on the two main towns of Enniskillen and Omagh, and how do we progress this issue of getting people out to areas like 6 Mile Cross, Barra, Greencastle, Carrickmore, Loch McCrory, these different areas across our district that, as Councillor Keenan says, have schools locally, have families and businesses working locally, and that seemingly are always last in line. And even when families or groups of community organisations or different neighbourhood groups have contacted DFI to get icebox or grit boxes installed in their own areas, are refused due to whether it's the measurements of gradient or whatever it might be, despite, you know, people with mobility issues, elderly people, it doesn't seem to factor in. So there's a job of work here to do. I think it is positive that there is some progress been made in terms of looking after the county towns, but I do think it definitely needs to be widened out. And when I hear other speakers saying we need to go back to Stormont to get the budget for it, I look around and I think, do they not speak to their party colleagues that they could maybe ask them or request them or plead with them, whatever it might be, to represent the people of this area and get that funding made available to the people of this area? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I will try to be short on this, but just in terms of this flag issue that's been discussed tonight, I mean, I think that there is a general consensus across the district that where flags are flying illegally and where flags are being used in a way to demarcate territory and to tribalize areas which ought to be treated as shared space, that is unacceptable, particularly where it applies to public property. And I think that is something that should unite all of us in terms of how we deal with these sensitive issues. And whilst I personally am more than happy to engage with the kind of conversations that Councillor McElduff refers to, I think that we do need to be straight about the fact that there is a need for Stormont to step up and show leadership on this particular issue. As Councillor Maguire referred to, £800,000 was put towards a commission to deal with these particular sensitive issues, and a report was put to the Executive Office, which has not been released to date, with potential solutions that could deal with a number of these challenges. So I don't know if the Councillor Coffey would wish to incorporate this with his own proposal, or I'd be happy to propose this on its own if necessary. But I think that we as a council should write to the Executive Office asking for the publication of that report, so that potentially we can see those solutions be put on the table to these challenging issues around making sure that we do have shared spaces right across Fermanagh and Omagh.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Maguire, just a sentence, please. You've been...
Just for information for Councillor Elliott, the flags that he's mistakenly taken for national flags flying in Derlin are the flags of the Derlin GA Football Club. The colours are actually green, white and yellow. Just for his information, not to be misrepresented. Celebration in that town for its football club, Gormaget.
Right, members, there's a lot of proposals in front of us here, and we'll try and gather them as best we can. Just bear with us. With the overall report proposed and seconded, Councillor Hurd-Thornton, and seconded by Councillor Coffey, we had a proposal then from Councillor McElduff that we write to the Housing Executive, Lady Helen Hicks. Could we have a seconder for that proposal?
I'll second that, mate.
Councillor Feely, thank you. And then we had a proposal from Councillor Deehan when she was speaking that we would look at some of the dangerous junctions and planes, etc. Maybe I think that maybe it'd be a good idea if councillors had any of them to forward them on. Maybe any in their areas. Is there a seconder for...
just for clarification, is that dangerous junctions in Omagh, or is it dangerous junction that
I think that could be junctions across the district.
Right.
Are you happy to second that, Councillor?
Yeah, absolutely.
John, would you like in there a second?
Chair, yes, just in relation to that one, I suppose it wouldn't fit in with this current memorandum of understanding, because this is just in relation to footpaths, yes, and the clearing of footpaths, which council officers could be responsible for.
Okay.
Just to make that clear.
So that'll not be incorporated to this memorandum, but if members can gather them and forward them. We do have, that's Councillor McElduff's and Councillor Deehan's. There was a proposal by Councillor Curry, then it was seconded by Councillor Feely. And then finally was Councillor O'Coffey's proposal. Celine, you did clear, Councillor O'Coffey proposed about the flags, and then
Councillor Coffey's proposal was around a report on the outworkings of the issue of flags, and with consideration of how we would utilise the general powers of competency in respect of that. I've clarified that it's not a general power of competency
Yes.
issue. It would be the Clean Neighbourhoods Environments Act. I think there was, I think Councillor Green had raised a point about a general reference of the issue of roads clearance in the snow, particularly with rural roads, to be
Yes.
referred to the Rural Affairs Committee.
Yeah.
And Councillor McElduff had also raised the issue of the flags protocol, which is possibly connected to Councillor Coffey's proposal as well. Councillor Coffey's proposal was seconded by Councillor Keenan. And I suppose the outworking of that is a general further consideration of the issue of flags for the council. Finally, we had Councillor Donnelly's proposal there about writing to the Executive Office seeking the publication of the report in connection with flags, but that wasn't seconded.
Yes. Well, Councillor Coffey, just from what you've heard there, would you be happy to include Councillor Donnelly's proposal into that, your own?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to accede to that. I think it's a good, well-made point. I just wanted to highlight that my proposal was in regard to all flags from any direction.
Okay.
My other point is I don't necessarily agree with the directive that the general power of competency does not afford us the right to do this, because it effectively gives us the rights to do anything that an individual may do that is not specifically prohibited, and therefore it would include this, I would have thought. But I'm certainly open to if there could be further information on all options. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, are we agreed with that proposal and seconder? See no dissent. Celine?
No, that's fine. And again, just to clarify on the general power of competency, where it is a responsibility for another government organisation or in connection with other legislation, then it wouldn't be appropriate for the council to be using the general power of competency, which is why I had referenced the Clean Neighbourhood and Environments Act and the responsibility that does sit with the property owner, which in many instances is the Department of Infrastructure in this instance.
Thank you, Celine. Okay, members, we need to move on. We're moving on to item number 7, the Community and Wellbeing Directorate reports. Item 7.1 is to consider a report on street naming and numbering, paper F, and that's with John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. There are 3 here for 3 developments. The first one is in Gortnagarn in Omagh, where it's proposed suggested name of Glen Meadows Park for the development that is there. The second one is in Mullaghmore in Omagh, and you will see there that the number of proposals have been put forward, and it is recommended to the committee that it approves the name of Birchwood Hollow for the development. And the third one is in relation to the street naming development at Chanterhill Road in Drumclea here in Enniskillen, and it's proposed that the council approves the name of Aldervale for the new development. Chair, that's the 3 proposals.
Thank you. You have seen the 3 proposals, members. Councillor Tommy McGuire.
Chair, I propose that we
Sorry.
accept these 3. Sorry.
Hold on, Councillor Wilson, just Councillor McGuire's on before you.
Carly, just thanks again, Chair. I'm going to return to a topic that I have elaborated on quite a few times in issues to the naming and of new developments. And one of the proposals I made, where it wasn't a formal proposal to council, it was hopeful that in the outworkings of this process that we may come up with names that are reflective of the areas that these developments are happening in, and again taking into account avoiding repetition of a townland just for the sake of the townland, being that I'm aware of that. But I did suggest that if a developer was having a problem with the name of getting it linked to a local area, that there was at least 2 people employed in the council that are Irish language development officers who have a particular interest in townlands, as a conversation with them both. And I think, ironically, I think I made in jest that we were getting names like Butterfly Meadows and stuff like that produced across this district, and that was just taken as a random sort of example of what I would prefer not to see. Another thing that's quite ironic in our weekly show on Facebook of the townlands of our district and their meanings, and one that generates quite a bit of interest throughout the district and across all sections of people. This one this week was Mahra Nagira, and coincidentally there's a Mahra Nagira at Springfield and outside Enniskillen as well, which means the sheep's meadow. It translates directly as that, and it's up on Facebook as it is somewhere further up in Tyrone, another place. So meadow is Mahra or Acha, and for meadows to appear in so many recommendations coming forward is a wee bit disconcerting to me personally, because just reflect on the name of the place, not Gartnagarn, Oma, and we're calling it Glen Park Meadows. I think Meadows is a very weak add-on by any contractor to try and label a new development across an area that has such beautiful names already. The next one, Birchwood Hollow, Birchwood Creek, Meadowvale Hollow. Again, similarly, I would find those not very reflective of the townland of Mullaghmore, nor indeed Loch Skitter, which I'll leave everyone's imagination what the translation of that is, because I'm not quite sure. But I think if I could just maybe say that Birchwood Hollow, Birchwood Creek and Meadowvale Hollow are nearly reflective in the name of the loch, in my opinion. They do not reflect the naming processes that have been used in this part of the world for thousands of years, perhaps, and the richness that lays in. And if I could even just think of Birchwood Hollow, and instinctively I thought, well, a birch translates in Irish as bay, B-E-I-T-H, and a hollow is a bun. So it could have been quite simple to translate Birchwood Hollow into Bun Bay Park. It would have been, to me, much more suitable and not out of the world, not extreme linguistic wrestling to get there. It's a simple name that would have suited that area and would have translated nicely along with the old name of Mullaghmore, meaning the big headland. You know, so again, I'll just reiterate, as I continually do, that some of these names coming forward, sticking meadows or glebes and stuff like that at the end of a name is unsatisfactory. We have resources within the council that could assist these people to come up with more imaginative names. Indeed, I would offer my services to any contractor anywhere across the district that wants assistance to come up with a more imaginative, more identifiable name with the topography of the place they're building. I will respond to them, and if I can't do it, I certainly will get the assistance for them if we're failing to do it within the council. So I understand the Aldervale one is an historical name, and I can concede that, but at least it's not Aldervale Meadows or Butterfly Cups or anything as such ridiculous. But I do continually make this argument, and I don't see any response again. So
thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Maguire. Councillor Wilson, put across you earlier. Are you there? Are you looking in on this?
Yes, Chair, but obviously there's not going to be agreement on, so I will go along with that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I hear all of what Councillor Maguire has just said there, but with regard to the recommendations, the three of them, and particularly with the first two, they're in the Oma area, and they do, I suppose, represent the area that they're in. And I'm happy enough to propose the three recommendations as listed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Josephine Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, I was very disappointed in the name, particularly for the development, at the Glen Park Road. I just think they're very bland and meaningless, and I would support Councillor Maguire's comments entirely, and I think his comments do reflect our policy on street naming. And I was just going to propose, Chair, perhaps that if we could bring back the first two developments on the recommendation for further consideration, because actually the naming of a street or a development is very important, and it's something that should be considered at length. And I just think the names that we've come up with in this report are very bland, very unimaginative, and I feel they don't properly reflect the policy that was agreed by this council, Chair. So I propose we bring the first two back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Howard Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that Councillor Maguire proposed Aldervale. With regard to it, it talks at 213 about Tony Stick Mews as one that was suggested, but that's already on a small development on the Temple Road. So I'd second Councillor Maguire if he's going for the third one only there, which is the Enniskillen one, as Aldervale. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members. So we'll maybe just take them. We could take that one in Enniskillen, proposed by Councillor Maguire, seconded by Councillor Thornton. Are we all agreed on that one? Okay, that's all agreed. There was a proposal to take the three of them as is, which was by Councillor Thompson. Is there a seconder for that? And then we had a proposal from Councillor Deehan that we would relook at the first two again. Sorry.
Go Malaysia. Yeah, I'll second that. Go Morgan.
Okay, members, we have a proposal from Councillor Deehan and seconded by Councillor Curry that we bring back the first two. As members agreed with that? Okay, I don't see no indications.
Chair,
members, so
Chair, obviously I made my
Thompson.
proposal. It wasn't seconded, so I just want to be. I want to disagree with that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That'll be recorded. Thank you. Okay, members, we can move on to item 7.2, to consider consultation on proposed building amendment regulations Northern Ireland 2012, amendment of technical booklet guidance, part R, access to and use of buildings, changing places, toilet provision, paper G.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is in relation to a technical aspect of the building regulations. Part R of the building regulations set the minimum standards for all new buildings, and this is supported by guidance, which is included in the technical booklet. Or the change in place toilet facilities were never included as compliance guidance within that technical booklet. Or and these proposals are consulting on such facilities coming into and being included in the guidance. The consultation covers a number of areas, the scope and the types of building, the criteria and so on. And the response, or the draft response, is included in Appendix 2 of the report. And it is from section 4 onwards, as is highlighted in the report. So, Chair, the recommendation is that the Council approves the Manning Omagh District Council consultation response on the proposed building regulations for changing place toilet provision.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. Whilst this is solely to do with building regulations, as John has said, and it's point R, there's an issue, I think, in that there's a minimum standard and a grouping of buildings in regard to particular type of buildings that it applies to. I'm not sure that there should not be a tie back to planning policy statements with regard to the SPPS. Because what we're doing here basically is within the regulations, they are setting the technical provisions, which is fair enough, in regard to access, the size, the equipment, the setting and everything. But what they're doing is they're tying it in to a building size. Now, I think that's extraneous to the building regulations. It actually should be a standard set within the planning, and the building regulations then should actually interpret the technical details. What this appears to be doing is actually setting a policy and also technical details. Now, I'm not disagreeing with the thrust and the sentiment contained within the amendments to Section R. But I think it actually cuts across planning policy, and there should be an issue of tieback, actually a change in planning policy. Because if you take the thinking, planning policy would also set minimum standards, basically space requirements, good design. It also sets, and this is external, the provision of open space compared to the size of the development. What this is doing is actually putting a bar above which there is a statutory requirement to provide this provision. I think, and I would raise the question back to Building Control Division, that there should be an amendment, an appropriate amendment carried out through the planning regulations and a PPS.
Okay, Councillor,
If we could actually put, I'm proposing that we actually include that back in the consultation.
Yes, Chair, we can certainly include it in the response to the consultation. There is in question 2 there. You will see there is a question relating to the scope and the relevant types of, on the size of buildings and whatever. So it can certainly fit in there, but back into the planning policy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, I would commend the team that have responded to this. It's no easy ask responding to, again, quite a complicated and one of these questions that, or one of these questionnaires or reports that kind of takes nearly wants to steer you in one way or direct you in terms of your response. But I would like to actually make a couple of additions to the current response, just having consulted with a couple of members of the Disability Advisory Group in relation to this area. And I suppose first off, I would ask the question if any organisations or for peoples with disabilities were or are being consulted, or is this consultation purely for building control and people associated with building control? In relation or with respect to the Changing Places consultation itself, I've been advised that there's a number of shortcomings in terms of the proposals made within the actual consultation, that it doesn't include transport hubs and terminals, and it's believed that it should, because transport hubs are subject to building regulations and therefore should be included, as inclusive travel is a key component of any inclusive society. Also, and I think it's picked up or noted within the council response, that public toilets should be included as a category. The report itself isn't bespoke for the north and our lower population rural communities, which could lead to a geographical disparity throughout, with most Changing Places toilets being provided in bigger urban areas and around, I suppose, the coastal towns or the coastal tourist areas, which maybe attract more development, and that perhaps a square meter threshold, perhaps the square meter threshold, sorry, could be lowered, and as this may be more suitable to our area. The fact that it doesn't include seemingly refurbs and extensions represents a major shortcoming, as this is a more affordable and sustainable form of development. The question at the end was added specifically to the consultation as it was raised as an issue. The advice was that building regulations change is meant to be progressive and will continue to develop, and that's a very supportive consultation response on the inclusion of refurbs and extensions would smooth the path going forward for future updates to the standards. Hopefully as well, and again it's noted within the council response, this will be supported and supplemented by a Changing Places toilet fund for the north, and that public bodies will welcome and adopt fully inclusive design as best practice going forward. So I would propose the adoption with the addition of those points, and obviously being mindful of Councillor Irvin's input there as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bernice Swift.
Gormagat Cahirlock, and I'll second the adoption with the inclusion of all the remarks made also.
Thank you.
We attended a workshop, some of the members attended workshop earlier today, and there's another one tomorrow on public conveniences, and the CPTs were mentioned also. And it was made clear to us earlier that really we don't have a statutory requirement to provide public conveniences. It's an age-old thing from the Victorian era, where the public conveniences have been provided. But I think now heading towards a statutory requirement for these CPTs is an excellent way forward. And it's only until we hear, read and see the issues that people suffer and are, I suppose, disenfranchised because of their disabilities and indeed complex health needs that there is the necessity for such CPTs. And as Councillor Irving said, setting this policy and the technical details, it wasn't really that clear all in all to me. And I just would ask again, does it actually cut across planning policy? Because if that's the case, then that certainly needs to be included. I definitely think the visual looks is definitely a good design, but given our discussions earlier, we need to be very mindful of those pertinent and salient points that have already been made. Gurmagat.
Thank you, Councillor. So that's proposed by Councillor McAleer and seconded by Councillor Swift with those add-ons. Are we all agreed? Thank you, members. Move on now to report for information. Agenda item number 8, Environment and Police Directorate reports. 8.1 is to note Tullyvar Joint Committee update report, paper H. This is just minutes, I believe. Correct.
Yes, Chair. Minutes of the annual general meeting and the previous meeting that has taken place in respect of the Council's joint venture with Mid Ulster District Council around the Tullyvar project, and it is for noting as set out in the recommendation.
Thank you. Celine, could I have a proposal?
Propose the note, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Earl Thompson.
Second the noted, Chair.
Thank you. And all agreed. Thank you, members. Item number 9 is Community and Wellbeing Directorate reports. 9.1 to note Building Control and Licensing Report, 24th of August to the 20th of September 21. This was John.
Yes, Chair, again, this is just a standard monthly report. Members will see that there is a change in how we report at Appendix 1, in that the detail that isn't included there, and this is on advice on a review of all the data that is put out in the public domain in relation to GDPR issues. That's the sole reason, and this is in line with what other councils are also doing. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Erskine.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I was about 5 minutes late to the meeting, so I just would like to declare an interest in relation to 9.1 as one of the entertainment licenses relates to it's something I'm involved in.
Okay. We'll
Thank you,
record
Chair.
that. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McAleer.
Right, Chair. Yeah, it's just on the point made by the director there. I'm wondering, does that mean then that all applications are still presented to us? Because normally that first appendix would be a lot more than one page. Is it just certain detail is not presented, or is it certain applications aren't presented? Thank you.
Chair, this is in relation to building control applications, so this is nothing to do with planning. So the advice that we have received is that because of the personal nature of the information that is there, like we can certainly provide an extension to a dwelling, but we can't provide the address or the name as to what approvals or rejections or whatever. So as opposed to provide details of the number of the approvals and detail, yes, an extension to a dwelling or whatever is really of no information to you. So going forward, what we do propose is just to provide the table as you see here in Appendix 1.
Thank you for that clarity. Could I have a proposer to note, please? Board. Councillor Tommy Blair.
Seconded, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, just happy to propose the noting of the report. But if I could just draw attention to the issue of the dogs report, are we proposing all together at the minute, Chair? Yeah.
Are we proposing all? Yeah, we'll take all together. Yeah.
Yeah, happy enough to do that. But if you just allow me a minute to draw attention to the fact that there were 2 dogs put to sleep, and I see that they had attacked a person. I know other councillors and myself had issues about dogs attacking people in the district before, and some seriously injured. I just like to keep reminding people that if you do have a dog, you must be responsible for it at all times, and encourage people to put them on leads. I did see a few large dogs about the town lately off the lead in areas where people would have go for walks, etc. So it's just a reminder to all dog owners to keep the dogs under control, and a lot of people do not like dogs and are uncomfortable around them. So a larger dog especially would need to be put on a lead.
Thank you. And I think I got Councillor Deehan as a seconder for that. Councillor Armstrong, you have your hand up there.
No, Chair, just I'll remove it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, members. Now, we do have quite a bit of correspondence, members, so we'd like your cooperation to get through it as quickly as possible. Item 10 and 10.1 is consider correspondence 13th of September 2021 from the Department for Infrastructure regarding the proposed disabled persons parking bay at Main Street, Trillick. That is just for noting. Members, so if we could have a proposer, please. Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded, Councillor Robert Irving.
Yeah, second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 10.2 is to consider correspondence dated the 16th of September from DFI regarding the proposed part-time 20 mile/hour speed limit, County Fermanagh, 2021 to 22. Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Margaret Carley, yeah, I'm happy to propose a noting of this and particularly welcome the introduction of the part-time 20 mile per hour speed limit at Tempo Primary School and Billy Primary School, and the other two mentioned there in Belcoo and Lissenskey, but particularly those in Earn North. Just want to welcome that. Seems to be a bit of a rolling programme coming out of that pilot scheme that was done, and I think that's very positive because we've all spoke, I think, about this and about the need for the speed limits to be looked at outside schools, something we'd like to see. So just welcome that and happy to propose a note.
Thank you. Councillor Bernice Swift.
Yeah, Garmagat, can I just have some clarification on what exactly does part-time mean in this instance? Maybe John or Celine can comment on that, please. Because just confirm that for me, and then I'll come back in. Thanks, just to clarify my understanding.
Okay.
Chair, not 100% sure, but I do believe it is during school hours.
Yes, I think so.
But we can certainly come back to the member and confirm that.
Yep. I know in West Rowan, Bernice, that it's during school hours. If you drove past around 3 o'clock, you would find that the lights are flashing and speed limits in place.
100%, that's grand, because it's for that very particular reason, Chairman, that I would be supportive and not supportive at other times, because particularly in one area where it's lowered to 20 mile an hour, where there's clear sight lines and clear line of vision, and 20 mile an hour sometimes if people are driving at a snail's pace, it can also cause accidents too. And I'd be more on the incline of road safety must start with proper driver's education, because any habits that we have learned from age old can continue. And I would like to think that everyone learns how to drive properly before they actually go and take their test and learn the rules of the road, respect what the signs mean, and how to maneuver in any number of circumstances, be that from heavy traffic in front of you to bad inclement weather that we have in our area, and of course, very importantly, the school children coming to and from and walking on the footpaths, and parents letting children in and out of cars. But when it's a quiet time, as you've explained to me, outside of school hours, the lowering of the labels shouldn't be wholly necessary, because my concern then is that people are going to be caught speeding, maybe only doing 30 or 40, but that impinges on points on their license, ups their insurance, maybe means a fine and all of that. And that would be unfortunate. And I know constituents would not appreciate that. But if it's a harmonious agreement, the flashing lights at school times, that part-time measure, I'm fully supportive of that.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Blake.
Thanks for that, Chair. Thanks for letting me in. And I'll be very quick just to say that I welcome the announcement of further schools being added to the list, and also to clarify things there
for Councillor Swift that yes, it's only during school times that when schools are arriving and leaving that they have the 20 mile. But my separate proposal would be to write back to DFI and ask when St Aidan's High School in Derrylin, which is on a very busy main road, the main Enniskillen heading to Dublin into Cavan road, has not, it was part of the original list of schools, but has not yet been what would you say, enacted yet or enforced yet. So I'd be like to write back to DFI and ask when St Aidan's High School in Derrylin would be added.
Okay, are you happy to second the noting of the correspondence, Paul?
Absolutely, Mark, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a seconder just for Paul's proposal there? That way,
Second, Anthony.
Councillor Feely, okay. Next on the list, there's Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I think it's very positive. I've had my own experience. I had a hit and run dropping a child off to one of the schools on here, so it's I think it's very necessary. I just like to request possibly the letter that's going that Councillor Blake has proposed, whether the question could be asked around whether we all know that the mileage restrictions in our towns and villages are quite regularly, almost meaningless in some cases to many drivers. So I'm wondering if we could put in a request that design features could be installed to actually prevent really excessive speeds in these stretches, because you can think of places where there's a 30-mile limit and people regularly are traveling 50 plus, and I'm just wondering whether if it's outside schools that this should be accompanied with adequate protections, because school children will probably think that they are much safer than they potentially could be if someone was speeding there. So if Councillor Blake would be willing to speak to that. Thank you.
Councillor Blake, you have enough with that?
Not so sure. It's kind of a separate proposal entirely. That it's a separate thing he's looking for than what I'm asking.
Okay, we'll keep it separate then. Is there a seconder for Councillor O'Coffey's proposal?
I'll second, Chair.
Councillor Deehan, okay. Did you get that? Is that okay, John? Thank you. Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I was just going to come in a second, Siobhan. No, just glad to see them coming in there, especially in Belcoo. There was a serious speed going down to the school there, and I'm glad that Councillor Blake mentioned St Aidan's there. I was going to mention too. That's all. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would want to welcome the one in Dona. It was extremely dangerous outside St Joseph's, and it should have been on the first batch of them. I'm not as just welcoming of these four as everybody else is. I think it's an actual disgrace that only 4 out of, I believe, 100 last year and another 100 this year has been allocated to Fermanagh, where we have a lot of rural schools that are on roads that are more than 30 miles an hour. I think it's actually a disgrace, and I actually think would propose that we actually write to the Minister to up the allocation to Fermanagh. I believe we did that last year and it was ignored. But 4 just is not enough. I'm not sure how many has been allocated to the home area. Maybe that could be incorporated into it as well. But I know 4 isn't enough for Fermanagh. So I would be right.
Okay.
The Minister on that.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you. Some of what I was going to say has already been covered, but I would certainly welcome the rollout and implementation of this programme. Several years ago, there were test locations scattered around Northern Ireland, and they were found to be beneficial. Some of these schools here are already inside a 30-mile-an-hour limit. Some aren't. One school I had been pushing for has been done is Florence Court, but just again for the clarity, the timings of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is the arrival at school and departure from school, whatever period that takes. The lights flash, and there's no reason why anybody should be speeding when those lights, because they are so obvious. The original scheme had mains electricity to them. I think these ones are solar powered, but they do seem to work. And if one life is saved as a result of it, it's well worth it. Yes, we'd like to see the programme rolled out as quickly as possible, but I suppose it's down to finance again. But as quickly as those schools that have been on the list can be implemented, I would certainly support that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Deehan. Maybe Councillor Deehan. Okay, maybe that was an error. Okay, members, just to tie that one up, Councillor Green had proposed that we write to the department around the rollout of these. Could there be a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Anthony.
Councillor Feely. Okay, and we all agreed? Thank you, members. Item 10.3 is to consider correspondence dated the 20th of September 2021 from the Department of Infrastructure regarding the Wellington Road Southern Bypass Scheme. And as for noting as well, members, could we have a proposer, please? Councillor Robinson. And a seconder? Councillor Blake. Thank you, members. Item 10.4 is to consider correspondence dated the 21st of September from the Department for Infrastructure regarding the proposed parking, waiting, restrictions on disabled parking at Darlene Street, Wesley Street and Halls Lane and Enniskillen. And there is a copy attached for members. Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Happy to propose. It's the progression of the Enniskillen Public Realm School. I think we're all behind it and welcome it.
Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, Chair, I was trying to get in the previous point. Obviously, I didn't get picked up upon, but it was in relation to the southern bypass. There's a little bit in that letter I think is quite concerning, or maybe of concern.
We have moved on now, Councillor, from that. So we're on 10.4. 10.4 proposed by Councillor Maguire. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Thornton, is your hand up to second?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very happy to second this. This is actually the extending the parking that the public realm is going to give on some of the delivery goods bays, which will make much more sense and is hopefully one of many that's going to happen with the public realm scheme. So very welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, members. 10.5 is to consider correspondence dated the 22nd of September from Waste Investigation Support and Enforcement regarding supply of specialist environmental enforcement services. Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Margaret Carley proposed a note.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Paul Robinson. Thank you, members. That's proposed and seconded.
Chair, if I could just
John,
come in there just for one little second. You will see in the last sentence there that the company would welcome the opportunity to meet with elected members in order to discuss what business they do in relation to other councils with regard to enforcement for littering. Just wondering if would be keen to have an informal discussion with the company.
Would members wish a meeting with the company? Councillor Coffey.
Proposed, Chair.
Chair, can I ask whether this would be opening the door to the outsourcing of work, which is already currently done by our own staff and workers? Thank you, Chair.
No, Chair. I suppose this is just a proposal from the company. I know that they do work in a number of other councils here. So no, it wouldn't be outsourcing of work, but it would be. I suppose we hear so many times here in the chamber in relation to how we enforce littering. So this is an opportunity to hear what they do and how their model operates. So we're not taking a decision as to whether we're going with them. It's just to listen to what they have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deehan had proposed. Councillor Tommy Maguire.
I will go, well, it's just on John's clarification there. Similar to Donal, I would have had concerns that it was to override our own structures that are already in place. In reading the letter, it's a self-financing, which is worrying, because if it's by waste collection and enforcement that they're bringing in their revenue, you would think they were going to be very much like a litter police and a dog mess police, where they're actually walking around after people nearly to make sure that they get a fine in so that they can finance themselves. I'd be questionable about the whole structure of it. But if the director thinks that we should meet these people, maybe it's worth considering by the members. Sure.
Chair, it's solely up to members. I suppose it is operational in a number of other councils.
Yeah, okay, well, we do have a proposal of one more speaker, Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, I would be like Councillor Maguire there and Councillor Coffey. I'd be a bit concerned about the outsourcing of work when we do have some staff available to forward this ourselves, and again, kind of wary of the whole tendering process as well, in terms of if we saw that this was something that we needed to do, how we would pursue that. So I would propose that we don't actually meet them and that we progress, just as previous councillors had noted, that we just note the correspondence and move on to the next item. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
members, so we have two proposals. None of them seconded yet. Can I have Town Councillor Coffey?
Second, Councillor McAleer's proposal. Thank you.
Okay, is there any dissent to that, members, or is there any members wish that we should meet this group organisation? Okay, Councillor Deehan?
Sorry, Chair. Well, I don't think there's any harm in listening to what they've got to say. I mean, I think that we're mature enough to listen to what they have to say and to question them. And I don't think it's appropriate that we should close off our minds entirely. I mean, our fears may very well be totally unfounded. And after all, the ultimate decision lies with the council. So I think we should listen to what they have to say.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tommy Maguire?
Gura Magat, Carly, well, in response to Councillor Deehan, could I maybe make a suggestion that Director John would approach, seek out further information and make a further presentation at a later date? Would that suffice?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Thornton? Just the last one there.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to second Councillor Deacon, but, you know, I mean, I think we should learn and listen. We don't have to make any decisions until we've knowledge.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. So, members, would we be agreeable that John would look into further information from the...
Chair, I can certainly talk to the company and can bring a report back to a future meeting. I think that was a request actually a number of months ago in relation to this from a member in relation to services that were provided to the council. So I can certainly talk to them and
okay. Our members, is there any dissent from that? Councillor Coffey?
Frankly, I prefer the councillors to meet than a representative of the directors. I think it'd be more informative, but personally, I think we should not meet them at all, because I think we have every confidence in our staff, and I think that outsourcing is something we have to oppose. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, we'll record your dissent. Is there any other dissent from John bringing back this information? Report?
Yes, Chair, can you record my
Councillor
dissent
McAleer.
also? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, members, thanks for that. Item 10.6, correspondence dated the 23rd of September from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs regarding council animal welfare budget 21-22. Copy attached. I have a proposer to note Councillor Paul Robinson. Councillor Robert Irvine.
Happy to second or propose if Councillor
Okay,
Robinson
seconded by Councillor Irvine.
Noted.
Thank you. We all agreed, members? Thank you. 10.7 is correspondence dated the 24th of September from Locks Agency regarding water pollution incidents. There's a copy attached. We have a proposer for that, Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, happy to propose noting. I just think the content of it is very interesting, just in relation to their jurisdiction and then the fact that it's really the Foyle catchment area. When it comes to Fermanagh, they're the sole responsibility of NIEA, an organisation really that isn't fit for purpose. So it's very concerning, especially for the Fermanagh councillors and residents of that end of the district. But happy to propose to note at this stage.
Councillor Robert Irvine.
Happy to second noting. Thank you.
Right. Okay, members. 10.8 is to consider correspondence dated the 30th of September from the Department for Infrastructure regarding Glencam Road Oma vesting order. 10.8. That is, members. Councillor
Proposed.
Proposed.
Yeah,
and
thank you,
seconder.
Chair.
Seconder, please.
Yeah, and can I just welcome it, Chair?
Yes.
Yep. Just that I want to welcome that vesting procedure. That area of the Glencam Road is a particularly dangerous bottleneck, and I think that this is a first step in major improvements there. So happy to propose to note, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you, Chair, and happy to second Consulation's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. 10.9, there's no other, is there? Other correspondence? Okay. Thank you, Celine. Thank you. 10.9. So item number 11 is any urgent and relevant business. Members, can I bring to your attention?
Sorry, Chair, there is a letter on 10.9 from the Department of, from Minister Pooch's department. In relation to the waterways and environment.
That was dealt with in 4.2 under matters rising, Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I would like to make a proposal of it because
No,
I don't,
no,
it's
Councillor
not, it's
McAleer,
not
we have
noted,
to, no,
it's
it's
not
not
noted
been,
as being part of
no,
4.2.
it's not, it was already dealt with, Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I would like to make a proposal, and
Councillor McAleer,
it's not a
it's already been dealt
contentious,
with. We're
it's not
moving
a
on.
contentious
Now,
proposal. Chair.
yes, we need, I believe we can get the meeting finished, members. I have got a request for any urgent relevant business. And there is a confidential item as well to bring in. So could we have a proposer, Councillor Irvine? Are you going to committee?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I propose we extend, we can
yep.
finish, and also propose going to committee if you want.
Thank you.
Second.
Councillor Maguire.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Just before we go into committee, I had a correspondence from the Chief Executive. She required a proposal, members, for Councillor Clark and Councillor Rainey to attend the AGM of the National Association of Councillors on the 15th of October, which is in the Glenavon Hotel, Cookstown, and the attendance needs to be granted this week, so before Friday. So could there be a proposer and second,
Chairman,
please?
Chair, Councillor Thompson, happy to propose accordingly.
Okay, and Councillor Robert Irvine?
I'll second if Councillor Thompson has jumped in front of me.
Okay, that's proposed and seconded. Are we all agree?
Councillor Irvine.
Okay, thanks, members. That's just for Councillor Rainey and Clark for the NAC. Okay, we'll move on to item 12, which is matters rising. We had proposed by Councillor Irvine to go into committee and to confidential. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Tommy Maguire. Thank you, members. Item Celine?
Yes.
Just when is the recording back on? Okay.
Chair, under matters arising in confidential business, the council reviewed the minutes of the confidential minutes of the 8th of September and dealt with matters arising, and also dealt with some issues in relation to confidential property matters.
Thank you, Celine. Could we have a proposer for that? Councillor
Ian, Chair, thank you.
and Councillor Howard Thornton seconded. Thank you, members, and we'll just call the meeting to a close. Thank you for your input and support tonight. We'll call the meeting to a close at 10:29 p.m.